Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act.
Welcome one and all to another episode of the Kindness Project. This is episode 299, as I've been reminded, which is a bit daunting to know that we've done almost
a lot. It's a lot.
300. I wouldn't say hours, but I don't actually know what happens after edits. How long?
I mean, our esteemed producer can tell us.
Approximately an hour each.
Approximately an
Between
hour.
50 minutes and an hour each.
Yeah. So 299 is a hell of a lot. I mean, I don't know that many podcasts actually that get to 299 entire episodes. But we've done it. Woohoo! High five. Virtual high five for us.
Well done, chaps.
Well done, chaps. It could be more enthusiastic.
I'll be totally honest with you. In the early days, it was a bit hit and miss, and I thought you was going to drop out after sort of 50 and 100. But yeah.
Well, it will. I mean, we've talked about this quite a lot between ourselves, but now the book was published, which was ultimately the aim of
that was the goal, yeah.
Funny enough, I listened to episode 1 of the podcast. This was about 6 or 7 months ago, and in the first one, I said I want to publish a book about kindness, and I want to interview people about it. And I forgot I'd said that in episode 1. To be honest, I couldn't even remember saying that. And the fact that we've now done that. We've raised money for charity. We've done loads of good stuff with the Kindness Project. It will be the end at some point, and the end will be the end. It won't be never the end, because it will actually be the end.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling a bit melancholy about that. It needs to come.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about it?
Well, it's sort of like this thing we do together. So either we need to find something new to do.
We do need to find something new. And what's Russ going to do? What's Russ? What are you going to do with your life?
Russ is busy doing stuff.
He's not bothered.
I'm forging a career of mine.
He's absolutely emotionless about the Kindness Project, Charlotte.
For me, it's run its course.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I think there needs to be an end to all of it at some point, and it's as you say, it's coming up to the end. Which, yeah, I've got mixed emotions about. You want to replace it with something else that I don't know what that's going to be. And Russ is sick of both of us, and he just wants to crack on with his own life.
Fair. We've all got our own projects now, though, haven't we?
I mean, like, when I started the Kindness Project, I had a couple of projects on the go. What I'd love to see is the evolution in both your lives over the last. How long have we been doing this, Sarah?
For me, this was the beginning of something much bigger. So it taught me to keep to a schedule. It taught me to stay on top of what I needed to get done, and it taught me to be organised. And then obviously I come to work at Sabello, now I've evolved into my own stuff. So it was the beginning of an evolution for me.
Basically, it took Rose to be the legend that he is today, didn't it? That's what he did.
I think, I get what you're saying about this teaching you stuff, Russ, because I definitely think, early on, it was like we weren't getting the numbers.
That consistency, it told me, the consistency of keeping on top of it and making sure it's done.
Yeah, I think I took a different lesson from it, because I remember early on when we weren't getting the numbers, and I've sort of stayed in that mindset of no one's listening, but we're still making it, and I think that I've taken something from that, sort of the mindset I stayed in of no one's listening, but it doesn't matter because we're making it.
You know what? I think I agree with that to a certain extent, but I look, the fact that we don't care whether anybody's listening or not, we still enjoy it anyway.
The trouble is,
And
we
the
know
fact that a lot
people
of people actually listen.
in the back of your mind, you know people are listening. Just in the front of your mind, why are they listening?
Well, yeah, well,
I still don't know, Russ. I still
Exactly.
haven't. Well,
as someone who like wants to go into more of a creative profession, like we're talking at the moment about publishing my first poetry collection, and like I've had a lot of things of like, well, no one's going to read it. There's no point. But like doing this, I'm sort of like, well,
you know what?
I'm half convinced myself no one's listening to this, and we still sit and make it.
But you know what? The reality is, and this is my experience. You do it. You do the right stuff in terms of marketing it and sort of getting it out there and building it. And as Kevin, I don't know if it was Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams, it was one of them, said, "You will build it, they will come."
Build and they will come, yeah.
And they sort of have, yeah. It's been good fun, and we've done some good stuff with it. What have you learnt about kindness, Russ? As we are a podcast about kindness, in the experience you've had throughout.
From my personal point of view, I didn't look at myself as kind as such. I looked at myself more helpful. But
is kind and helpful the same thing, though?
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. Being there for people and offering them support when they need support, etc. For me, that was being helpful, not kind.
Okay.
And yeah, it showed me that I'm a lot kinder than I thought I was.
Okay, that's good. And what have you learned from the guests, you reckon?
I think that even though we have struggles in our life, we all lead our own path, and it's up to us how we handle that path.
I think that's a really important lesson. What have you learned?
You don't always have to react negatively to your experience.
Well, I think if we've shown anything by all the people we've interviewed, is you've got a choice when adversity hits. And I think we've been lucky to interview loads of people who've gone through challenges and struggles, and in every single interview, mostly every single interview, they've dealt with it in a way that adds value to the world.
And the other thing,
and that's not always easy. We know that, but they've managed to do that.
The other thing it's told me that it's good to talk.
Yeah.
Good to try and get out of your system and.
Yeah, I think the ones that are always interesting to me are the ones about sort of mental health and stuff like that, and finding ways that we can find strategies to cope with some of the challenges we face. So absolutely love that. What we're going to do today in today's episode is share some of those experiences we've had throughout the years. I mean, I don't how deep are you going on the compilation section?
It'll go across all years. So it'll go across all 6 years.
How are you putting 5 years in one episode?
But I take 6 years.
6 years.
18 to 23 is 6 years.
Okay,
I take segments out of each interview, so I don't put one interview as a whole. I take questions out of each interview.
And are we? So we're hopefully we're in the arrangements of doing something special for. This is episode 299, by the way. We're going to do something super special, hopefully for episode 300. But I'm going to just let you do your stuff for us and let our audience listen to the compilation.
All right, good.
All right, I've got loads of time. I'll be here early. And then I'm like, why is stuff in music? And then the helicopters are there. And I'm like, oh, has Russia got involved? But anyway, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, but we're all good.
No worries. We're all good. Fridays is my day off, so I'm not rushing. I've got some admin jobs to do, but apart from podcast interviews, we're good for today. So I'm a bit more relaxed, which is all good. How's your week been?
Yeah. I love that piece of art behind you.
Yeah, my wife's family is Scottish.
Oh, mine too.
All right, cool. Where are they from? In
She was
Scotland.
born in Perth. Her dad was a Church of Scotland minister, so they've moved around a few places. But she was born in Perth, then lived in and around Edinburgh most of her time.
Gotcha. So Cassie's mum and dad, funny enough, moved down to London and then moved back, live in Arbroath on the East Coast.
Oh, it's nice there.
Very nice, very nice. Like little fishing village, really quiet. Not too far from Edinburgh, actually. You can still. We were up earlier in the year because I don't know how you found it, but one of the biggest things for us over the past sort of 15 months is Gaz's mum and dad's up there. Our kids are sort of 9 and 17, and they haven't seen their grandparents in their early 70s for a year and a half. So it's really nice to get up there. But we went for a day to Edinburgh. Dundee is sort of up and coming now. That seems to be, they've got a Victorian Albert Museum and Tate's up there, so they're doing loads of stuff with Dundee. So yeah, it's a nice part of the world to be. Between you and I, bit quiet for me because I'm a London boy. There'll
be some people in Arbroath who I can guarantee will have never been to Edinburgh.
I know.
Because they'd be like, what? I've got the butchers, I've got the bacon, I can get my candlesticks here. Why would I want to go to Edinburgh?
You know what? Actually, Arbroath, weirdly, last time we went, and I don't know what's changed, but it's got some like funky boutique shops now. So
yeah, oh, that's it. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Nice,
so it is coming in. I don't know if I'd say the 21st century. I'd say probably about 1998. It's getting there, mate. But there is an appeal in that quaintness as well. Do you know what I mean? There's quite a sort of nice sort of when you go there, it's nice for a holiday. I don't know if I'd move there.
It's the type of place that you can catch your breath.
Yeah, exactly.
And we all need a moment to catch our breath now and again. I don't know about you, but I love Carlisle, like you love London, but there's something about leaving your city to get a fresh perspective on your city.
I agree. I think you sometimes just need the break to make sure you're in a position where you understand. Number one, I think travel in any respect broadens the mind a bit. So it allows us to look at what might be good and what might be sort of not so good about other places, but also just taking a break. And having a bit of a rest. It's funny. I've got. I'm doing the marathon in a bit week's time. I'd say it's brilliant. Normally, I'd say it's brilliant, but I'm right in that period where, like later on, I've got to go out and run 18 miles, and it doesn't feel particularly brilliant at the minute because that's quite a long way. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And funny enough, Gazzy and I, following week, are just going to go away for a long weekend, just as a bit of a breather, because you need to sort of decompress every now and again, don't you?
Well, I don't know about you. I find I need the right amount of pressure on me.
Yeah.
If I don't have any pressure on me, I'll struggle sometimes to get. And I'm never bored. I'm always active, but I'd struggle to get one thing done. If I've got too much pressure on me, I kind of nearly go a bit like the old PC computers when you get like a blue screen. I'm like, I feel like, like a diamond or whatever needs the right amount of pressure to bring out the very best. And I imagine, Chris, I think you're probably the same, type of person as well, are you?
Yeah, I'm really lucky, Andy, because I've got really decent business that we've had for 10 years. all of this stuff, Russ and Charlotte, and the guys at work support me with all of it. So I tend to drive stuff forward well, and be the face and the voice of stuff. And to be honest, Andy, they could have picked a better face and voice, mate. I mean, they should have done. Then I've got an amazing team, probably like you have, that I couldn't do it without. So it's if you asked anybody who works with me, they'd say, I can't work out what he does because he just seems to delegate all of the tasks that he doesn't want to do, which is a nice position to be in. I'm still not in a position where I think I delegate enough, but we'll get there.
You've got, and I know you've got questions for me, but I've got a load of questions for you, and maybe now's not the time, but I've got questions about your business question. I've got questions about that, taking that process of a seed of an idea and something, and then how you've seen that, and how that moment of, I'm going to delegate this, and I think the person's got the vision, they've got the values, but how then do you help them believe that it's their thing as well? And how the balance of giving them enough courage, and so it's their thing, and then not overpowering and underpowering. So I've got a whole lot of questions, but maybe now's not the time, but another time I'd love to. I'm like, why do you do the Kindness Project? I'm sure you could be making more money. So what is it about you what shifted in your heart that you're like, what, I'm going to give some of my time to help make this happen?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that one because I love talking about that. And then if you'd like to pick up for a chat, I'm always happy to do that. Russell will get that arranged for me. But let me just give you a bit of a sort of story in terms of the Kindness Project and where it is now. 2 motivations for the Kindness Project. And currently I'm just finishing the book, so it'll all be in there as well. So we're 30,000 words into that, and I want to get that out sometime soon. But
will you send me a link where I can pre-order that? I'd love to.
Not ready yet. So it'll be probably another 6 months till we get it to that point.
I'd love to be one of the first to buy that.
Oh, cool, brilliant, mate. So first thing was starting about Russ. How long have we been doing the podcast now? 4 years?
Just over 3 years.
3 years. So been doing the podcast for 3 years. The gem of the idea, as I explained in the book, was when I was 6, or 7, I won a Chinese plate when I was at primary school for being the kindest boy in the class. And I came back, and I remember my mum being really proud that I'd come back with this plate. And then sort of fast forward on 44 now, so fast forward on till I was 41, and I was in a position where I was looking at the world and going, there were movements in the world where it seemed to me that hatred and sort of conflict and this attitude of everything was, negative and people were only out for themselves was the perception. And I think, that was sort of, certainly the news is like that, but there was political change that seemed to elude that as well. I just got to a point and go where I went, there must be, my lived experience is that most people are pretty good, and my lived experience is that most people, I've met loads of people who are doing amazing stuff in the world. So I wanted to share some of those stories, so I got to the point where I thought, right, that's sort of, and we're really lucky, I'm not uber wealthy, but the business does well enough to make sure I'm looked after. Still work 4 days a week, growing that and building that. But I like to have a bit of balance in my life in terms of the stuff that I do. So started the podcast. And then the second motivation was Charlotte she's 17 now, so she was 13, 14 when we started it. um, and I got to a point where I realised that we needed probably something to work on together to just maintain that connection.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be fun, like just getting together once a week, laughing, chatting, joking, and then just introducing people who are doing good work in the world, and just help get their story out there. Called Russ. He said, "Look, I'll help you with the technical side, so you can do it." And
We all need a Russell in our lives.
Oh, everybody needs a Russ, Andy. Everybody needs a Russ. And then a couple of years ago, my mum passed away. So she was in her late 60s, had cancer. We knew she was going to pass away. And she said to me, "You know that plate you won when you were 6? I kept it, and I've still got it. And would you like it?" So it was this element where we'd started the Kindness Project, but just that, like, I'm glad that she saw that start to build and develop and grow into something that was that was worthwhile and people were really enjoying. Now it's turned into something that Russ and I pinch ourselves and can't believe. So Russ excitedly contacted me. When did you let me know about our big news, Russ? Last week or this week?
Last week.
Last week. We're getting 1,000 downloads a day at the minute.
A day?
A day.
So that's 365,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean that's been our top day, and we're not there like consistently yet.
That's amazing.
But when the first week, I think we had 4 downloads.
We should point out that fluctuates.
Yeah, that's what I said. It goes up and down. But you were really excited about that, right? It's like that 1,000 downloads, and then you turn around and go, you know what? That And we don't take any money for this. We haven't even got a sponsor, even though we've got sort of really good numbers. We've decided that we're not going to sponsor it because I don't want it. Not that the commercialism would change what we do.
Well, there's a purity about it.
Yeah, and we might sponsor it to do a bit of charity fundraising.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We might sort of just use the money for another purpose. But yeah, so. It's turned into a bit of a monster, but I still love it. I get together once a week with Charlotte. We have a laugh, have a chat, and then just get to introduce people on that are doing amazing stuff in the world, including you.
I love it. I love it.
It's good fun. Right, shall we interview you now? Let's get that done. Right, okay. So really informal, really like sort of, I know I sent you through the questions, but that's more of a framework so we can sort of have a really good chat, and then we can go from there. Russ, are you on?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Amazing, right, great stuff. Andy, thank you firstly so much for coming on and talking to us about the amazing work you do. I know we've had a really good chat pre-podcast, which was great. I really enjoyed that, and that was more about me, which is a unique thing that people ask about me first, so I thank you for that. But tell us and tell me and our audience a little bit about you.
Well, listen, what an honor to be part of this. Anything with kindness and project in the title, I'm like, ding, ding, I want to get involved in this. So such an honor to be part of this. Yeah, so my name's Andy Fearon. I live up in Carlisle in North Cumbria, the golden city of dreams, the most generous city on the planet. Not everybody knows that yet, but one day.
You're persuading them, one person at a time, Andy.
Persuading or wooing or, one little cup of coffee and the man behind me in the queue at a time.
Yeah.
But no, I've just turned 48 years old. I feel in between 16 and 24, maybe 26 now, maybe 26. But no, so I was born in the city, grew up just outside the city in the Perma. Mum and dad had a family business, growing strawberries, fruit and veg, flowers. And that was my life for a big part of it. when I was about 19, 20, I had an encounter in a nightclub, and that kind of changed my life somewhat. Yeah, and that was, wow, when I was about 20, 21.
Talk to me a little bit about, I mean, we'll talk to you about a little bit about your life, because I want to know a little bit more about sort of what happened in that change and when it occurred. But do you think, because I'm 44 now, so we're of a similar age, and I wake up in the morning and go, I still feel like I'm sort of in my mid-20s. And I was talking to my dad the other day, who's 74, and he said, in my head, I still feel in my 20s. Do you think that ever goes away?
I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good...
I meet people who are 24 and they've got a heart and a mindset of somebody who's 80.
Yeah.
And my mum, it's funny, my dad's 74 as well. And oh man, my dad, they call him the JCB because he just digs. He is as fit as a butcher's dogs. He just walks all over everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think age is much more of a mindset. And a heart position than actual physically. So I
think maintaining an optimistic perspective, positive energy, and staying in shape to make sure that we can carry on. But doing all that sort of stuff is really important, isn't it?
I often feel like, I often give the illustration of swimming in the Lake District. If your eyes are here under the water, it's all a bit murky, and like 8 millimeters different. Your eyes are above the water and you can see it all. And I think it's quite easy for people's heads to be dipped. And all we're trying to do is just lift a couple of chins and say, look what else you can see. Look what's around. Look what's possible. Look what's doable in your lifetime.
That is one phrase that is going to stick with me for a while. Just chin up. Chin up, and then we can see what's going on and potentially have a different perspective on the world. I like that. So you mentioned about early 20s, you had this sort of moment of change. Help me understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you want me to share or not share about this. So I would have gone to church as a kid, and generally it was a good experience. Like, I saw real kindness in my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
They would just do anything for anyone at any time. I remember standing in the rain as my mum is taking like shopping to an elderly person. I remember on Christmas going to visit someone who would have some challenges in life. And I remember looking at all the cards in the room thinking, oh, this person has got lots of friends. But when I looked closely, they were all blank. But my mum would have known that, and she would have just turned up and just said, listen, you're not alone. I'm here for you. So I think the whole kindness thing was in my DNA kind of growing up. And that church was a kind church, because I know not everybody's experience of church is good and healthy. But at the same time, I was bored silly on a Sunday. I would sit like this, counting the ceiling tiles. And I remember being a bit annoyed, even as like 6, 7 years old, with the minister at the front. I'm like, you're making this boring. You're making Jesus boring. And the little I know of Jesus is he was a bit of a rascal. Like, he wasn't afraid to have people around the table who didn't fit in. Like, he wasn't afraid to mix it up a little bit. Anyways, my life was full of, I hated school with a passion, but I loved working for my dad. I loved swimming. So my life was full at 14 years old.
You're on the lakes, aren't you, where you are?
Yeah. We're like 20, 30 minutes away from the Lake District.
Oh, amazing.
And so, like, some of our best holidays were just in a tent beside a river, messing around in the river. We didn't have much money growing up, but I honestly felt like the richest man in Cumbria, because, and this is a rare thing, I had a mum and dad who loved me. And I think, we take that over anything, wouldn't we?
You know what? I think, you're a dad, Andy, aren't you?
I've got 2 kids, yeah.
Yeah, so my 2 are sort of 9 and 17. And, that like sort of it's one of those jobs that you take on. I was 26 when Charlotte was born, and it's one of those jobs where you know, normally you get a bit of training, but this is a job where they go, you do realise there's no rule book for this, and you'll probably get most of it wrong. And you go, oh, cheers! The most important job in my life, the one with the most responsibility to bring up this human, and you're telling me there's no like sort of rules around it, and you sort of learn as you go. But
Oh, listen,
you know,
I was an amazing parent when I was a youth worker. And I was surprised. Why don't more parents come and ask me my opinion about how they should parent? And then I had my own kids. I'm like, oh man.
I think, I mean, certainly, I think, I mean, I'm a good fun dad, Andy. I'm a good like when there's fun stuff to do, I'm pretty good. I realised that I'm not a great homeschooling dad, and that's been particularly apparent during the pandemic. But I'm sure we've all got our sort of strength. So, church. I mean, it's interesting when you talk about church as well, because you know I'm not religious. I think kindness. Can can be a trait that you can have regardless of your faith.
Oh yeah.
But having that community behind you, and it looks like that you've got a church where that community really helps support your sort of great work. So tell us a little bit about your church.
Yeah, so it's called Carlisle Vineyard Church, and my wife and I started about 8-9 years ago. And, you know, some of our values that we kind of pick up through our life, through our experience, it was very much, we wanted to be a church for those who didn't connect with church.
Yeah. Right.
And we're way more concerned about the needs in the city than meeting the needs for a certain type of person that, oh, I want this type of song, or I want this kind of thing. So we thought, how, and it's a funny question, how do you measure if you're a successful church? And we knew that this is no way about how many people are going to come, but we wanted to measure our success about what are our, and it depends what you say, you know, the KPIs or whatever, the measuring stick in the city. So we thought, what about the single mums in the city? What about those who are trapped in the thing of benefit and renting? Do you think it'd be possible for us to be able to plan and work towards helping them find a meaningful job, not just a job, but a meaningful job? I remember meeting this guy, and I was helping him and encouraging him to start a job. And he got a job working at a local tip company. And he was on a conveyor belt sorting out the rubbish. And I'm like, listen, well done for getting started. And if you show a bit of hunger, a bit of oomph, you know, you'll stand out like a diamond.
Yeah.
And then he said, oh, yeah, you know, they pay me minimum wage. And then I said, oh, tell me, what does that mean to you that they pay you minimum wage? And, you know, his response was, he said, well, you know, they get minimum me. And I'm just like, oh, man. So I know I've kind of diverted a little bit there. So when we think about what it looks like to help change a city, I know for sure Carlisle Vineyard is not the answer. However, we can be part of a solution.
But
we look to partner.
Yeah, I suppose that part of that change is changing attitudes and mindsets, isn't it? And having that conversation about, you know, potentially, you know, making a bit more effort in our lives, in whatever aspects of our lives we want to improve, is probably going to lead to better results. Maybe not short term, maybe not like sort of in the first couple of weeks, but over the longer term, you can change that. And it's interesting because you talk, I mean, we talk you know, a lot of the conversations, and funny enough, the interview I did before this, Andy, we talked about measuring impact, because you know, kindness is quite esoteric, isn't it? You know, it's one of those things where you go, well, how do you just you can't just put a ruler against it and go, we've had this much. So talk to me how you did that. How did that happen?
Again, it is through partnership, and it's through friendship with the city. And I think traditionally the church hasn't got it and I'm very clear. Listen, you know, you hang around me more than a few minutes, you'll realize I'm just as messed up and as broken as anyone else. And we don't always get it right. But the one thing that we, church generally hasn't done right is there's sometimes a fear of church about connecting with people who maybe don't believe what they believe as well.
Yeah.
But what we've done is saying, look, if you're for the city, then we've got more in common.
Yeah.
So it's actually our Michelle Masters, who heads up Carlisle Ambassadors, who actually connected us. So when we first started the church, there was this little tiny advert in the Cumberland News saying, hey, listen, if you want to help Carlisle be a better place to live, work and invest, then Carlisle Ambassadors is starting. So right from day one, we said, we're all in. We're all in.
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because we spoke before about what incentivized me to start the Kindness Project. And one of the reasons was a firm belief that there's more that connects us than divides us. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that, don't we? And people like you are doing amazing work, sort of just reminding us that you know, even with the stuff that divides us, you know, understanding that, you know, there's a collaboration to happen there to understand a bit more is the starting point.
I mean, when you boil it all down, the one thing I'm relentless in saying, whoever I meet, no matter their story, no matter their background, no matter what abilities they have, no matter what resources they have, no matter what they've got in their hand or their heart, I will always say, you are a gift to the city. Like, you are a one-off, unique, like there's nobody quite like you. What you can bring to the party, nobody else can bring. And I don't care if you think it's big or it's small. If you look out for your neighbor, if you're a good neighbor in the city,
you're doing the job. Yeah.
Like that would, like, you want to end all wars? Be a good neighbor. You want to end division? Be a good neighbor. Yeah. Like, it's not complicated, I don't think, this kind of thing.
Incremental steps, right? You know, start small and then it builds. And I suppose part of the reason that I wanted to chat is because I heard about the sort of Give a Day for the City project that you do. Tell me a bit about that.
This is one of my favorite things, because you would love it. And if you ever want to come on and hang out for some of the time, you'd be so welcome. So this started... Can
I bring a kayak so I can go for a little kayak on the lake? Because that is one of my favorite things to do.
Okay, listen, we're renovating an old house and we've got space for you and your family to come and stay. Or we can even do a house swap or something. We're going to be friends for a long time. So there's some beautiful places for you to kayak. You're so welcome. And so this idea of Give a Day, it kind of started, actually. I remember maybe 12 years ago, I was sitting with some other church leaders talking to our MP at the time. And everybody's questions was about, what can the MP do for us? And I just kind of got thinking, I wonder if we've got this the wrong way around. No disrespect to the MP, but the MP, they can only do certain things. They can only have a certain sway. And so this idea kind of began to bubble in my heart. And it simply is, it's the simplest of ideas. It simply says this: what would it look like if each of us looked in our hands, looked in our hearts, and gave away that one thing for one day? So if you're a builder, you give away, like if you're a brickie,
skills. Yeah.
If you're a bank manager, wow, that's different, you know. If you're a business leader, whatever you've got in your hand, whatever resource you've got, what would it look like to give that away for one day? And there's something within us, Chris, and I'm sure you've seen this. There's something within us as people comes alive when we live a life bigger than our own.
Yeah.
And I used to think that Give a Day was all about delivering these big projects. To be honest, the actual project has gone to the bottom of the pile of importance. And we still want to deliver the project, but we've realized that the the connectivity with people, the community part of kind of like this community task. You know, we want to get the task done, but we want to build community.
Yeah.
We did this one project, and this was a beautiful project. Carlisle has flooded a number of times over the years.
Right.
And in 2005, 2006, it flooded again. And there was a number of properties that were not insured. No fault of their own, because if you've been flooded within 10 years, it's really hard to get
Difficult
insured.
to, yeah.
So man, I've got to be careful because I can feel my heart welling up. Loads of people were doing
Andy,
stuff.
just so you know, right, mate, you are allowed to cry. I cry on the podcast all of the time. So if you feel it, feel free.
Well, part of the thing is I can see stories, I can see people, you know.
Yeah.
So part of what we were doing, and we were not alone. Like the floods were the worst for some people, but you know, the floods also bring out the best in the city. So Carlisle saw the worst of the storms, but the best of the people. Me and my boy, so I've got two kids, Noah, who's 14 now, and Anna's who is 11. So this was like, what is that, 6 years ago. And one evening, because it was December time and it was cold, we were going around some of the homes that had been flooded, and the flooding had gone up. Like they filled the whole living room. You can imagine how scared you'd be. You're upstairs and the water's coming up. So even today, we've got people in Carlisle who are scared when it rains, because they're like, when will it finish? Anyways, we went to this street that had been kind of overlooked and forgotten by people. And I said to my son, listen, I don't think anyone's there. Let's move on. But he knocked and he waited. And we had these little Cadbury's chocolate fingers. It was nothing. It was like a quid. But this house, the torch came on upstairs. This guy came downstairs, he's in his 60s, and he opened the door. And he just looked white, like scared, anxious, nervous, looked like he hadn't slept. And we just said, listen, my name's Andy, this is Noah, and we just want to let you know that you haven't been forgotten. And we handed in the £1 box of chocolates, and something magical, something spiritual, something happened in that transaction between my boy, who was 9 at the time, handing it over. Suddenly that box of chocolates became a box of courage.
Yeah.
Anyways, we built a friendship with this guy, and I remember sitting outside of his house a couple of months later, thinking of things like DIY SOS. And then I'm like, why not Carlisle? Because Carlisle's a bit of a bypassed place. People will say, oh, Carlisle, I bypassed Carlisle. And I'm like, Carlisle, you're not bypassed. You're not
Yeah. Like you see it on a motorway sign. And yeah. Gotcha.
And sometimes that kind of gets into the people a little bit. And I'm like, come on, we're Carlisle.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the starting point of Give a Day, but through Carlisle Ambassadors, they were so generous. They just opened up the platform and said, Andy, come and share your heart, come and share Give a Day. And I just said, come on, Carlisle, what's in your hand, what's in your heart, give it away. Yeah. This girl, Melanie Taylor, incredible lady. She's a HR amazing expert. We met with Miriam Lowe, who helps lead Give a Day. Oh, I'll tell you, just without Miriam, Give a Day would still be in my heart, and I'd be running around frustrated. Miriam...
Well, look, we've already spoke about this, Andy. You need people who can organise you really well. If you're an ideas person, you need somebody to go, you know what? Can we get this done? And they go, yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your Miriam's part of that thing.
Oh, absolutely. So Miriam, we do Give a Day. We are 50-50 in this. And she'll say, Andy, you came up with the idea. I'm like, yeah, but you done something with that idea. Anyways, we met with Mel in Sainsbury's food bit. And she's like, listen, I'm happy to get involved in Give a Day. If you anything you're wondering. And I'm like, how do you feel about renovating some properties?
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll give it a go. And we said, well, listen, we don't have cash, we don't have anything, but we've got loads of encouragement and we think you can do it. Anyways, she eventually got 35 individuals and trades to come and help renovate this house. Something like £37,000 worth of stuff just got done. And I remember being part of it in that week. And you know, loads, and then friendships have happened from there.
Yeah.
And this guy said, he said, listen, I wouldn't wish to go through it all again, but having met so many good people, I wonder if it's been worth it.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we, again, you know, one thing that comes up on the podcast, particularly over the last sort of year or so, because we, the challenge you've got is when you think and talk for a living, you just wonder what you can do practically to help, Andy. So I felt that during the pandemic, that we could sort of do some kindness project lives on Facebook, and we were sort of doing sort of loads of stuff during the pandemic. But interestingly, you talk about the floods, and I'll apply that to the pandemic as well. We were hearing about people being so generous and kind during periods of crisis that you know, you never wish a crisis on anybody, but actually, and I don't know how you've found it, but tough times sometimes bring out the best in people, right?
Absolutely. I feel like COVID's been a magnifier.
Yeah.
It kind of magnet. So if there's isolation already there and loneliness, then that will be magnified.
Yeah.
But and there's a few little things like, so I found the start of COVID really hard because, and I'll be careful how I say this, but in some ways, and obviously all the personal heartache, like nobody wants to see that happen at all. But with a disaster, you kind of like, okay, we can serve you, we can do something. But the start of COVID, I'm kind of like, okay, give a day. Here's how we're going to love our city. We're going to stay home.
Yeah.
And I felt like, not that I'm Batman, but I felt like the Batcave's
What
closed.
could you do? Yeah. But then I'd imagine that what you helped with then had to adapt. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so we've done loads of different projects, and one of the things Chris, absolute heartbreaking. A couple of years ago in Carlisle, on Dixon's Chimney, there was the most heartbreaking situation where a gentleman had climbed the chimney in the middle of the night and to take his own life. It was just the most heartbreaking thing, because the gentleman slipped at the top and he got into a really predicament where he was crying out for help in the night, and people weren't able to rescue him, and so sadly the gentleman died. But everybody in Carlisle, not everybody, but so many people saw this, and there was like traumatic. It was just traumatic to be around Carlisle at this stage. And one of the ways we're like, well, how do we serve our city? How do we love? How do we come alongside? So one of the things we did, and this is where Carlisle City Council, they gave us like £1,000 to help make this happen. We got small white bags. Yorkshire Tea heard what we were going to do, and they gave us pallets of tea. McVitie's Biscuits heard what we do, and they gave us some tea biscuits. And we put some little cards of courage in there. We put some sweets in there. And we went round to 1,000 households around the chimney. We knocked on the door and said, listen, you know the heartache that's happened, and we just want to let you know that you haven't been forgotten. We see you, and you're not alone.
Love it.
And we just said, listen, if you need, we're here. And then we talked to the people at the cafe at the bottom, and they gave us a room. And we just created this space to talk, really. Now, I'm saying that because when COVID happened, we realized that this mental health is just going to be like a tidal wave, really. So again, Miriam, the marvelous, wonderful Miriam, she pioneered this idea of space to talk. So nearly every Friday during COVID, we've been in Carlisle City Centre with a team of people who've been trained as listeners. Partnership with NHS, Carlisle City Council, and this small team of people give away a couple of 100 bags of courage every Friday. And we say to people, hello, have you had your free bag of courage yet? And of course, some people will be like, no, what is it? And other people are like, what? I've never got out for now. What's that? You're tricking me or something? But you know, it has led to so many conversations. And we'll just say, hey, how's COVID been for you? How are you? And I'll just tell you this quickly, Chris. You know, sometimes when you have no idea what you're doing, and you think, oh, it's just a bag of courage, or it's just somebody's writing a little postcard or somebody, and people who are listening, they've done good deeds. They've knocked on the neighbor's house. They've called somebody when they felt prompted. They've done these little acts, and you think they don't really matter. Well, I just want to encourage every single person, no matter how small your action, no matter how short your text, no matter how small and insignificant you think it was, it can be absolutely life-changing for someone who receives it at the right time.
George Kindersouth lives in Massachusetts. Oh. He lives in Massachusetts. He lives in Massachusetts, which is a state, isn't it? But he spends several months a year in London and Hawaii.
Oh! Did you know in Hawaii there's too many noise complaints, so now they can only do aloha. No,
got it wrong.
I missed half the joke. So now they can only laugh under a certain decibel. Now they can only do aloha.
You should tell him that joke.
No.
Right, is that... Guys,
What?
I buy stuff for packed lunches. I bought 12 drinks for packed lunches for this week.
Mm-hmm.
There's one left.
Apple juice.
It's not funny, Sophie, because I'm a bit skint until Thursday.
Well.
See what I mean? They've got no idea. It's not about that. I buy them for packed lunches. That money comes from somewhere.
Mum's right. I haven't either.
So what are you whispering? Now that my back's turned?
Charlotte said she hasn't been drinking.
I had a carton earlier.
Right, what shall we talk to each other, shall we? Everybody.
This is tried eating it.
Then why is it still in the house?
Right.
What's this?
Right. If you, on your laptop, open it up.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. I have a feeling it's going to be...
I'll forward this to you at your attempt tool, yeah?
Yes.
Can you put your cardigan in the trousers on a hanger, please?
And we've got the questions on the second screen, yeah?
Look, it's Brennan.
I don't know who Brennan is.
Any lights that don't need to be on, can we turn them off? Jesus Christ.
We don't know who Brennan is.
Do you know who Brennan is, Raz?
I don't.
Brennan Lee Mulligan.
I'm not familiar with him.
You're not familiar with his work?
No.
His
Brennan.
mum's a graphic novelist.
Brennan. He's a graphic novelist, apparently.
No, his mum's a graphic novelist.
He's what?
His mum's graphic.
Oh, hell.
She writes sci-fi graphic novels. Yeah.
He didn't do 50 Shades of Brennan or anything like that then.
Good on Brennan's mum.
Do you know, oh my God, also good
No.
Why is that drumstick? So that's mine.
She's a bit territorial over there, drumstick.
So
Brendan's mum. And Lee Mulligan's mum.
Yeah.
But about questions for the interview we've got coming up.
What have been these ones
Right.
that I've already got?
Yeah, scroll it down so I can see it. Don't worry about Googling Brendan Lee Mulligan's mum. Right. Now, where is our guest? Elaine Lee.
Yeah.
She looks old.
She was an actress, apparently.
Yeah, of course.
Ah, right. Okay. You ready?
I'm gonna mute myself. We're already recorded.
All right. No worries. Sophie, what are you necking there? Right, up.
what are you doing?
Go and get your pajamas on, please.
So, upstairs.
Hi. Hi, George. How you doing? No.
Oh, that one's
You're on mute and I can't see you.
Yeah, here I am.
Hey,
here.
hello. How you doing?
Hi. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Let me get the sound up here a bit.
No
Mhm.
worries. Have you got a camera or you? I mean, it doesn't matter because it's an audio podcast.
I do. Yeah, here I am.
Great. I can see you now. I'm
Alright.
Chris. This is Charlotte.
Hey,
Hi, Charlotte. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
How's your day going?
So far, so good. Yeah, and yours is just about over, I guess.
Well, it's getting to the end. Yeah, it's getting to the end. It's a bit cold here in London, so it's I started cycling to work in October. I think I've picked the worst season to start that habit.
Oh my golly! Well, I spend, except for this COVID time, I spend 3 or 4 months a year in London.
Yeah.
Where are you? Where are you based?
We're in East London. We're on the East London Essex borders. So the postcode is an Essex postcode, but we're in a London borough. So I'm
Yeah.
still trying to work out where we are. To
Yeah,
be honest,
people
George.
ask where I live, and I'm like,
Yeah, between Essex and London. So yeah, it's
Well, that's great. Well, I envy you. We're eager to get over. We've got tickets we've purchased now. Of course, we thought COVID was coming down. Now Ukraine's coming up. You know, what do we do? But
when are you planning to come over?
we're coming over in at the end of June, mid to end of June. We spend 10 days with family in London, and then we go down to Cornwall.
Amazing.
And we may go up to Scotland because my daughters are looking at university right now, and they're interested in both the University of Edinburgh and St Andrews. Among the only two non-American universities.
Sure.
But when,
I mean, it's interesting because Charlotte's going this year, so she's
Oh,
up to
she
in
is?
September.
Oh, wow.
And the top one on the list is actually a Scottish university. So
What is that?
Strathclyde in Glasgow.
it's in Glasgow.
Strathclyde. I love Glasgow. I spent much more time in Edinburgh, but recently, as I did my tour for Golden Civilization, I spent some real time in Glasgow. What a city!
You know what? I think, Edinburgh's amazing, isn't it? Because it's,
Yeah, it is.
history and culture. And
Yeah.
because we'll just start the interview in a minute, George. But when Cassie's, my wife's mum and dad live in Arbroath, which is sort of the probably about an hour north of Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
What we try and do is every time we go up in the summer, do a do a week at the Fringe Festival.
Okay, yeah, love it. Oh,
Amazing. Such
Yeah.
a good atmosphere in
That's
Edinburgh.
that's how my wife and I met, in a way, was at the Fringe Festival, coming from different parts of America in August. Anyway,
Right, no, that is the conversation to start the interview with. We'll start with that because that's a good one. Right, let's start the interview and then we can include all this sort of stuff here. Right, great stuff. George, thank you so much for joining us on the Kindness Project. We really appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Great to be here. I envy you your time in London, because that's where we long to be. And as a family, we're coming over in a few months. Can't wait.
Amazing. What is it about London you love?
Well, I love the culture, but my family, my wife is an actress, and she's founded a theater company in the Boston area, and has used acting skills to train people as a consultant all over the world. So we're, and my two kids are both thespians, and so we're into theater, but we're also into music. We love the culture of London. We love the history.
There's always, I mean, I think Tired of London, Tired of Life is so true. You know, there's always stuff happening in London. And you know what's funny? And we've done this a couple of times, haven't we? One of my favourite things to do in London is going to the Globe Theatre by the South Bank. And I never ever buy the posh seats, right? I always want to stand where the action is and where the actors are coming in and out. It's amazing. It's amazing, isn't it? Right.
We went, I think we were watching Macbeth, I think it was. And so we were starting to make our way out during the performance. I can't remember why we were leaving. But one of the actors who was playing Macbeth had come round on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Mum got shouted at one point.
Yeah, we got in the way of the actors, which is a place where you want to be.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really good fun. So we finished the intro to the conversation with you telling us about how you met your wife sort of via the Edinburgh Fringe. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, it was really, I mean, we didn't actually meet at the Fringe, but we kind of discovered each other through the Fringe. I used to go to the Fringe whenever I could find a place in Edinburgh to stay. And so I was going to the Fringe this one year, and I saw just an incredible play based on a Melville short story from the 19th century. And it was in a small theater up there, you know, it was definitely Fringe. Yeah. And it was the best thing that I saw there. And it turns out that in the audience, possibly on the same day, was my wife we were both from Boston. She was up there. She was visiting that. I mean, I just looked at it because I love great theater. Yeah. She was looking at it because her ex-husband, who she's friends with and everything, is a theater director and a playwright, and he had written the play. And we both felt it was the best thing we saw at Edinburgh. So among other things, there were many other things. But
you know what's interesting about the Fringe for me? I love the fact that you can go up there, you know, and yes, you might book a comedian that you really want to see, or a show you really want to come and see. The one that always gets me is that show you didn't expect to be good. You know, it's that element where you go, you know, I turn up at the Fringe box office and go, should we try that? Should we try that? Should we try that? And they're the ones that tend to be amazing. But yeah, no, the Fringe is an incredible place to be. So yeah, it's good fun. And as you say, London is a great place. So for our listeners who don't know about you, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, that's a huge question, and kind of hard to do. But I mean, where I'm known best, I think of what I'm known for. I'm the author of 6 books. 3 of them are on money, but mostly on our relationship to money. So it's the human side of money that I'm known for. I've trained advisors from 30 countries, thousands of advisors from 30 countries in-depth training on how to listen better to their clients and how to find what really would inspire their clients to live the best life they're meant to live. So it's really about freedom. It's about listening. But I also I've written a book on of poetry and photography, and I'm now producing 5 more books on poetry and photography. I've written a book on civilization, as you know, and I've written a book on mindfulness. So on mindfulness practice, I've been a mindfulness practitioner for 50 years and taught mindfulness for 35 years. So I'm really all over the place in terms of what I do, but I live a passionate life in nature on a pond in Littleton, Massachusetts.
And when you're thinking about a subject for a new book, what is it that inspires you to pick a subject?
Yeah, I think the thing that has inspired me most is freedom.
Yeah,
and it's how I understand freedom. In any case, some people use it in different ways, but I think that that Homo sapiens, human beings, we were not born to be enslaved by autocratic systems or anything like that. We were born to live freely. And so the question is, how can we maximize that freedom? And my experience is that the more freedom there is around me, the more other people are feeling free, the more joy and delight and kindness and generosity and wonderful things, innovations are happening. So my passion has been, how can I deliver that in a variety of ways? And some of it is in environmental, because my latest series of books are kind of related to the environment. Some of it's civilization-wide. And the area that I'm most known for is in the financial advice area, because financial advisors are trying to do that, but they're trying to do it with money.
Sure.
And I just want them to be much better
More open-minded, right?
More open-minded, and to be really there for the client, totally to serve the client. So that's it.
Just out of interest, what book are you most proud of?
Oh gosh, probably this may surprise you, but my latest one. I think if I think of a legacy that I have, I think that most people think of my legacy as being in what's called life planning, which is the financial planning area. But I think of my legacy when I arrived here. You can see this is our driveway.
Right.
Okay, so that's going into our place, and it's under voltage.
I'm assuming it's a picture of your driveway. You're not just sitting in your drive.
Yeah, it is a picture. Yeah, that's right. So when I arrived here 30 years ago, and I took one look at the place, and I thought, this is paradise. I want to capture this. I want to live every moment in the weather of this place, in the experience of nature in this place. And I want to capture it every day with a poem and every day with a photograph. And so I've done that for 30 years. And now I'm putting them together so that every day of the year is it's like a book of hours, a book of
Amazing.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So you've got a poem for every day and a photo for every day of the year?
Every day. Yep, every day of the year.
Love it.
Multiple of each of those, usually 2 or 3 of each.
Love it. And is that the next? Is it, as you say, that's the next 5 books that are going to be published over the next few years?
The first one's out, and you can subscribe to it for free. You can get it in your email on a weekly basis. And the other 4 are within a year of being complete, and the other 4 are spring, summer, winter, and fall. The first one is a weekly edition. The next are daily editions.
No, that's really good. You know what's interesting? I know I said that we'd probably go off topic when I emailed you about this, because we normally do in these things. I'm reading a really good book at the minute called The Daily Stoic, right? So it's full of Stoic philosophy, but the idea of the book is you only read a page a day.
Yeah.
And it's not a natural, actually. It's not a natural way of consuming a book. Yeah. And it takes a bit of mindfulness and discipline to say, I'm going to stop after a page. But having that daily practice of just sitting and reading the page is really interesting. I do it in the morning. It's
absolutely
it's a really useful thing to do. Yeah, it's really good. Talk to me about, because I know that the sort of the work side is the Kinder Institute, and you do a lot of that. I know you do a lot sort of more broadly, but tell me about the work you do at the Kinder Institute.
Yeah, we've trained I think 4,000 advisors in 30 countries, and but our strongest base is in the U.S. and then in the U.K. and then in the Netherlands, and but we've got people all over the world. And and they're in-depth trainings, 2-day trainings, 5-day trainings, and then a 6-month mentorship. And those trainings are training people in how to listen to their clients so that there's a more connection, there's more possibility of something profound, so that the clients feel that they've got a great friend who's also really accomplished in the financial world, but who's really there for them, and whose priority is not getting paid money for their stocks and bonds, their guilt, whatever you call it in the UK.
Adding genuine value to their lives.
But they're there. This is a person that they would, in a crisis, they'd call because they know they would be listened to and cared for, empathized with in a moment, or the longings, the inspirations would be caught by the advisor and say, that sounds like what you really want to do. And we train them to listen in ways that nobody has ever listened to clients before in the financial world. So it's been wonderful. And then we give them the designation. It's a life planning designation. So yeah.
So I know a couple of people who've done the sort of both 2-day and 5-day course. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. I know Tina Weeks is a massive advocate of yours, but a friend of mine, Sam Wybrow. Sam was interesting because he mentioned the profound effect it had on his life before he started using it with clients. Do you find that happens quite a lot with the advisors that go through the process?
Yeah, what happens, the way we train, most people think of trainings as very intellectual and academic. We don't train that way. We train experientially. Yeah. So we give them the experience of listening to their clients. But the only way you can do that is by having somebody
listen to them.
Exactly. Yeah. So they get life planned while they're practicing life planning someone else. So everybody, when they come out of that 5-day course in particular, and now it's 4-day on Zoom, but out of that 5-day course, the Evoke course, they are on fire to live the best life they can live. And they hadn't been thinking of that before. Yeah. And they've been thinking, it's 2 years away or 5 years away or when I retire. And now they're going, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to live that way now. But at the same time, they've been trained how to really listen to their clients. So it's inside out, the training, and it's a wonderful experience. It's inspiring.
It's interesting. There's a friend of mine, a guy called Patrick Luong, who, funny enough, used to work with Ruth Sturkey. Many moons ago now, but he went through a bit of a life planning process, and part of his life plan is he didn't want to be a financial planner anymore. And the reason we knew him is because we knew him through the financial planning community, but then he joined the charity sector, and he's been a massive advocate of the work we do here at the Kindness Project. And the funny thing was, during lockdown, we'd sort of sent a couple of emails and stood in touch, but I hadn't seen him for ages. And I ran the London Marathon last year, George, in October. So thank you. So I actually, the first time I saw Patrick face to face in about 2.5 years was at Canary Wharf, when I'd done 19 miles running a marathon. And I was so emotional, and I don't know whether I should have done this on the back end of COVID. I gave him a big hug as I ran past, and he must have enjoyed it because he was waiting for a hug at 21 miles as well. So I got 2 hugs from Patrick. But do you find, there was a question somewhere there, do you find that actually that life planning process can facilitate somebody potentially turning around and saying, I've got my ladder up the wrong wall?
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the companies we worked with was in the Netherlands, and it was ING, a big insurance company. And the guy who ran it at the time, was a little kind of, gosh, he seemed very professorial and more like a teacher in some way, and a lovely guy, a warm guy, great sense of humor. And I gave this 5-day training, and one of the guys, and we don't let more than 12 or 14 people into it. So it's a very small training. He comes, the CEO comes on the last day, and he hears that this one guy has decided he wants to play the guitar instead and is going to leave the firm. And so he corners me, the CEO does, and he says, George, I hear Jared over there is going to be leaving the firm to play guitar. And then he burst out laughing, and he said, I want my people to be happy. And if that's what makes him happy, I am so thrilled. And he just believed in his community. And so we built quite a culture out of that. So yes, there is this enormous life planning's infectious, because you're so excited about your life that you kind of spread that joy and that enthusiasm around.
And I think life and business should be about people. You know, it's people first, isn't it? That's the important thing.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I was really fascinated to ask you, and it's about one ebook, The 7 Stages of Money Maturity, particularly pertinent for what we're talking about today in terms of kindness. Tell me a little bit about how Aloha, using money for kindness, works in your world and from your perspective.
Well, it's actually different from what you might think. The book 7 Stages of Money Maturity is about going through a hero's journey, becoming more adult in a way, becoming stronger with our hearts, with our heads, with the energy of our body, working through the dilemmas that we face that make us act out in ways, be reactive and all that. So it's really a psychology of money, and it leads to 2 states at the end. One of them is visionary, and that I think is very related to what you guys are talking about in the Kindness Project. It's about actually reaching out and doing amazing things in your community. It could be very small, it could be very large. Aloha is a little different from what you might think, because aloha is the passing of a blessing from one person to another, regardless of economic difference.
Yeah.
So it's like you're taken by surprise. Maybe it was someone just sleeping on the street in London, does something to you that touches your heart, where you're blown away that there's so much kindness from them to you. You don't know them, you're totally different walks of life, all that kind of thing. And you go, wow, that's amazing. And it changes your life. So it's those random acts of kindness, they're called sometimes, right? And you see that a lot. So it's more that than it is necessarily using your money.
Financial,
But it could be one of the sweetest ones that I tell the story of this person who, you know how you can, I don't know if this even exists anymore, but you'd get newspapers, you'd put some coins in a newspaper thing and you pull a newspaper out. And there was a person who...
It's that unexpected thing, isn't it? You know,
exactly. Exactly. This person saw a little 10-year-old girl always search and see if there were any coins left in there. And he worked across the street and in a convenience store. And when she was coming home from school, every day before she came home, he'd go over and he'd put a little coin in that machine for her. And she didn't discover that until 20 years later.
She didn't know who it was.
She didn't have, no, she thought she was getting it because the machine didn't work. But it turns out that he'd been doing it all these, for her child. And so anyway, it's these little acts of kindness you don't even necessarily know about them.
But it's just, I mean, we did the person who springs to mind about that is a lady called Bernadette Russell, who's a fellow Londoner. She lives south of the river, though, doesn't she? So a little bit different down there. But we loved her story because she, post the London riots, decided to perform one random act of kindness a day for a year.
Oh,
and
cool.
her book, about how she did it was incredible. I'd definitely recommend it. Certainly recommend it. So, give me an example of how we can practically do more things that sort of align to a lower.
Well, I think I actually think that it comes naturally. The more that we've developed our strengths, our maturity as a human being. So I think that being intelligent, if we're talking about money, being intelligent around money and not acting out in a foolish way is helpful, actually.
Yeah.
I think that developing your ability to listen to other people is also, so that's developing the heart. Being able to listen and empathize with other people means that you'll be able to see more quickly and easily, that's what I need to do, or wouldn't that be wonderful to do? And then the third thing, these are all in the 7 stages. The third stage of maturity is vigor, is just finding more vitality in your life. And the best way to do that is to live your life plan, to live who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And that's what may sound like it's doing all this stuff for yourself, but all those things are developing you so that you're more there when a possible random act of kindness
opportunity to do good. And that element of authenticity is so important, isn't it? Because I agree with you. You know, if you're not living your life in the way you want to do it, and to a certain extent pretending to be something you're not, then that has an impact on your life, doesn't it, in terms of the energy you bring to it?
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Why do you think we do that as a society? Is it just because we assume we've got to be in a box?
Well, I think society's complex in a lot of ways, and that's certainly one. And we've got all the models of psychology that we know of that come down to us. I think there's a lot of different things. I think that freedom comes in. My next book after these books of poetry and photography, I've already got a first draft recorded.
Amazing.
And it is a book on what I call the 3 domains of freedom.
Okay.
And those domains are, each moment is yours. And that's mindfulness. Your life is yours. That's life planning. And civilization is yours. And that's something we're really troubled by right now, obviously, wondering how that's happening. But in each of those areas, we hold ourselves back. So most of us don't even realize that there's a practice to master moments so that every moment is ours and we're not troubling ourselves and falling into reactive patterns. Most of us don't know that we can live our life plan as we want to. And that's the reason that life planning exists. And most of us fall into a very codependent relationship with civilization. Why are our leaders leading us this way? Why are corporations doing this? Why is the government doing this? But it's all ours.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's complex, but I think it's time for us to take all those things on.
Yeah. And how is it that you're managing to find the time to write all of these books? Because I don't know about you, but when I start writing a book, I often go off the trail and start writing a completely different one, and I never manage to finish one before I start another. So how is it you're managing to keep on track and keep writing these books?
Well, I'm passionate, I'm dedicated, and I've cut out. I mean, you were talking about cutting. What do we need to do? I've cut out a lot of habits that would normally distract me. So I rarely watch television. I need to surf the web some to be able to understand what's going on in the world.
And do the research and
research is the best bit.
But I narrow that. I don't get obsessive about it. I narrow it, and so that's narrowed. And the first 6 hours of my day I dedicate to what I think is most important, and that's my writing. And nature and living mindfully. So I'm out there in nature. I've got this world behind me, the world in front of me. I live in nature, and I immediately go from it to writing. So writing is my passion. It's my dedication. It's my meditation.
But that's a really good habit. Do what you love first in the day.
First,
whilst you've got the energy, and move forward from there. I suppose it's an interesting one, because this is a struggle that we're both going through at the minute, isn't it? Because we've got 4.5 years worth of really amazing people we've interviewed on the Kindness Project. I'm currently writing the Kindness Project book.
Great.
And I've got about 40,000 words. The bit that I'm struggling with is the editing process. So I've just employed an editor to help me with that. So hopefully that'll move forward. But
I didn't know you'd employed an editor.
Yeah, I've got a meeting next week about that. So yeah. Sorry, I'll let you know. My diary. I'm already in trouble because I don't give you enough notice for interviews, don't I? Okay, great stuff. So that we're here, actually, we'll move on to the subject of the interview now. We're here to talk about the Golden Civilization. Now, what I wanted to start is with a really super broad question. What does a Golden Civilization mean to you?
Well, I want to say, and I want to back up to the prior question just for a moment. When you were asking, how can you do it? How can you actually write so many things? Get life planned. If it's in your passion to write those books, you'll be much more on fire to do it and much clearer about the boundaries. So getting a life plan has been enormous for me, and following my life plan, constantly reminding myself of it is very important. Back to the Golden Civilization. I want to say that what is important more, and I will answer for myself, but more than for me, is what is a golden civilization for you? And what is a golden civilization for everyone we meet? And one of the things I did before COVID hit was I was on a world tour, and I went all over the world, and I went to Mumbai. I went to very poor areas. I went across Europe. I spent a lot of time in England, all across America, asking people this question: what is golden civilization to you? Gathering groups together and putting up on a wall what their image of a golden civilization was. And what was amazing to me was whether I was in blue country or red country, and I realized that's different in your country from our country. Those colors mean different things. But whichever country I was in, whichever part of the country I was in, they came up with the same thing. What they saw in a golden civilization was more kindness, more vitality, more compassion, more fairness, less false news and propaganda, more honoring science, more laughter. Everybody saw the same thing, less bigotry, less inequality. So all of these things were more democracy. Everywhere I went in the world, everybody wanted more democracy. Yeah. So these are the things that a golden civilization stands for, and for all of us. And my argument has been, it's time to do it. With the planet getting smaller and smaller. I mean, here we feel, crunched by war. We were crunched before this by the oppositional nature of our politics, or by the planet concerns. The planet's getting smaller and smaller, and we're getting closer and closer. Look at us. We're talking from all the way across, the Atlantic Ocean. We do this all the time now. It's so small. It's time to solve the world's problems and come together and make a great civilization. And we can do it. We gather together as a people.
So I'm 100% with you on that. Yeah. The bit that's interesting for me is, as you say, regardless of political persuasion or beliefs or principles, actually the underlying elements of what we're all looking for in our lives are pretty similar, right?
Very similar.
All pretty similar. How do we start then to remove some of those barriers that have gotten in the way?
Yes, there's a lot of different things. There are things we can do individually. If I look culturally, I mean, the most interesting thing right now is looking at what the Russian people think is happening in Ukraine,
Yeah.
what the Ukrainian people know is happening in Ukraine, what China thinks is happening in Russia and Ukraine, and what we think in the developed liberal democracy world. And it's really what we think comes from the news we get. So if we have a media that in fact is really a free press and is really investigating and is not driven by oligarchy or autocracy or whatever, we will discover what it is that we want to have happen. In America, and I'm sure this is the same in the UK, your press has gotten polarized like this, and our press has gotten polarized like this. So it no longer is the press no longer looks and tries to create something that's actually truthful. They more give one slant and one point of view. So that's one thing we need from a cultural standpoint. But I would say from each of us, I mean, we obviously, we can't solve the world's problems without democracy, which is one of good news elements, if there can be any, yikes, in this Ukrainian thing, is that it's clarifying that we don't want autocracy. We want democracy, and the people of the world really want democracy. So standing for that, but what can we do? There's different things. Is that what you're asking? What can we do? Because
before we come on to that, I suppose there's a couple of elements that are really interesting for me. I was talking to my wife Gazzy about it actually a bit earlier on. Ukraine's got a really interesting background in terms of fighting for democracy, and there's a really interesting Netflix documentary called Winter on Fire about Ukraine, when one of their previously elected presidents, who said that he wanted more democracy, looked towards Russia. And effectively, the students in Ukraine, followed by a lot of people who joined the protest, were in Kiev in 2012, 2013, protesting for him to go, and somebody who would support their sort of journey to democracy to come in. Like a lot of sort of totalitarian sort of strongman leaders, his approach was, we'll get the right police in there and crack down. And interestingly, the people of Ukraine grew in terms of the protests, so that the main square, there was hundreds of thousands of people at one time. I'd recommend that certainly our listeners watch Winter on Fire, because it's really interesting in what people will do actually to protest totalitarian and those sort of regimes. I think it's really interesting. But I suppose the other point I was going to make was one that you mentioned about the news, because I suppose part of the challenge we've got is some of the news we get now is online, isn't it? And that's sort of governed by our own particular perspective. Part of the reason we do the podcast is so that we can put some positive news out there. And we'll come on to what people individually can do to sort of manifest a golden civilization in a minute. But what do we do to make sure that we're getting fair, balanced, nuanced information without getting overburdened with and developing a pessimistic view of the world?
I think that we in America, we had something called the Fairness Doctrine in the 80s, where we insisted that news media be balanced. So even though they might lean left or they might lean right, they really needed to give the whole picture more. And our politics was much more stable and much more conversation going on. So I think that we do need to have some regulation in regard to that. But I think the other thing is, in America, and I'm sure this is true in the UK as well, there are three people who have as much net worth as half of the American population, 170,000 people. Three people. So we have gotten way out of kilter. And when you have that much wealth in just a few hands, it's very easy to manipulate the news in a variety of different ways. So we need to bring inequality down dramatically, and we need to more to regulate that there is science, that there's investigative reporting, that what is great journalism, and we know what it is. They teach it in schools. We know what it is and how to deliver it. So we need to implement more some regulatory schemes there as well, Chris. And then we need to model that to the world is the other thing, because China and Russia have just gotten more and more powerful with their autocracy. Much as you might talk about the power of the people in the Ukrainian video, at the same time, Russia and China have gotten more and more powerful. So we need to recognize that it's important for us to stand up for democratic values and to speak out for them, all of us.
I think you make a really fair point as well, because I think a lot of the conversations that happen, even though they might provide both sides of the coin, are about conflict as opposed to a starting point that should be, in my opinion, why are we so similar? As you say, regardless of political persuasion, there's plenty of people who believe the same things and want the same things. Why are we not looking at that first and going, there might be some nuanced differences we need to focus on?
I think unfortunately, the reason the news is so skewed towards the violence is because we are more likely to pick up and buy negative news stories, and that sort of influences what the newspapers are going to put on the front covers and what they're going to talk about and what they're going to publish. And so unfortunately we're stuck in this sort of cycle where they're only putting the negative foot forward, and it leads to things like I'm going to say the word correctly first time, catastrophization. So I've been struggling with that
rather
word
you than me, to be honest.
I've been struggling with that word since I was 15 years old. I've got it right. So basically the more negative news we read, the more likely we are to assume a negative outcome is going to be the end outcome. But unfortunately, it is what sells and what we are subconsciously
But
drawn
it's not
to.
it's interesting. It's not the reality, is it? Because most of us, millions of us on the planet, live in perfect harmony, trying to make the best of our lives.
Right.
But we don't see that. So talk to me a little bit about how we can get closer to that golden civilization, George. What can we do?
So individually, I think there are a number of things we can do. One of them speaks directly to what you're talking about, and you can find this on my website. But one of the things I did when I was traveling the world talking about a golden civilization was I came up with a format of having conversations about how to change the world. And we started with, what's your vision of a golden civilization? And we got this incredible vision. And then we go, okay, so what are the barriers to that? Then we look at the barriers, but first we get inspired by the vision. And how we look at the barriers is we go, what could possibly get in the way? If we all believe in a world of kindness and generosity, what could possibly get in the way? And they list the things. And then we go, okay, well, let's get to work. What can we do? What can we do to change this? And we built these communities of people who were constantly coming back and looking at what can we do to make the change, because we know that everybody wants this golden civilization. So the thing to do is to build that movement. It sounds like you're intrigued with doing that in your own way. And I think that's a very valuable thing. So one of the things is to promote golden civilization conversations and then action coming out of it, because just the conversation isn't enough. We need to be active. Otherwise we get into, but they're so powerful, but they do this, which is just codependency is all it is. There's no reason in a democratic society. Second thing is, you mentioned you believe that people should come first in finance. And there's this, obviously the ESG movement that I know you're very, very well aware of. I've been promoting a fiduciary statement that is, that I think we ought to put into law, that all organizations are required, in order to get their corporate status or their nonprofit, non-governmental status, whatever it is, are required to put people first, democracy first, and the planet first. Required to, ahead of their own self-interest, so that we know that we can trust them. when we begin to work with them. So that's a second thing. But I think the three other things are more personal. One is live your life plan. Go get life planned, get inspired, and live the life that you feel is the life you want to deliver into the world. Another thing is to, and maybe it's just one more thing, and that is the practice of mindfulness is a very powerful practice to begin to master our ability to be here in a spirit of generosity and kindness. So I think those would be the things that there might be one more, but that's what I'm thinking of right now.
So let's talk.
Yeah. So what part does mindfulness play in your life, would you say? So how does it affect you in your life daily?
So it sounds like sounds like it's been a daily practice for you for some time, hasn't it?
Yeah. Over 50
How
years.
How long have you been practicing mindfulness?
Over 50 years. Yeah. I'm 74 years old right now, and I'm turning 74 in a month. And I've been practicing mindfulness.
Let's call it 73 and change.
All right.
let's not add the year if we don't need to.
But I've been practicing mindfulness for 50 years.
And talk to us a bit. Talk to us a bit about the sort of the practice. Is it a morning thing? What is it? How does it manifest itself practically?
I've practiced several hours a day. Actually, I'm one of these fierce. Some people are joggers, and running the marathon and all that. My marathon is what I want to do more than anything is to be the master of the present moment. I want a mastery of the present moment. And consider this question for a moment. And my answer to your question about what is it for your life, it's everything in my life. It means everything. It's huge. But consider this question. Have you ever experienced a moment of freedom in the past? And you're right, you say, yeah, of course. I've, whether it's walking the beach or celebrating with my family. Have you ever experienced a moment of freedom in the past? And it's a trick question I ask a large audience, and I get everybody to raise their hand and say yes. And then I tell them that the truth is that they answered it all wrong, every one of them, because we've never experienced a moment of freedom in the past. We've only experienced it in the present moment.
In the present.
In the present moment. We have never experienced a moment of freedom in the past. So why do we spend so much time studying the past, looking toward the future? They're valuable. It's not that they're not valuable. But why don't we spend an enormous amount of time mastering the present moment, if that's where freedom lies, if that's where all of our experience is? And that's what mindfulness is. And you ask me what it does for me. I think I live many more moments. I think I'm alive, I'm fresher, I'm more awake in many more moments of my life. And I do it mostly, hugely in nature. So I have a meditative practice where I'm primarily following the breath, the sensations of the breath with my nostrils or my belly. But I also spend a lot of time in nature, moment by moment, trying to really be here. And and then it makes me a better listener. Frankly, that's why I teach it in my trainings for financial advisors. I listen better because I've listened better in here to who I am. Yeah.
You've listened to yourself, right? That's the thing. Yeah. And how important is that nature element? Certainly it's interesting during lockdown, and I'd openly admit to not being a great meditator, but during lockdown, my meditation was going out for a run, and we at the house is on the back of a county park, so we've got plenty of green space
Nice.
at the back of the house, and it felt very very peaceful to me to just go out for a run in green space. Because how important is being in nature for you and meditating in nature?
Huge. The in the work we do in life planning, we come up with a vision of who we want to be. And by the way, is our internet connection okay? Mine's bouncing around just a bit.
Mine's a bit. I think our one's a bit patchy, and that's probably the reason why we're doing it. But I'll make sure that Ras in the edit fixes whatever we need to. Is that all right, Ras?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. All right.
Okay, great. So
I think the question we asked was we were talking about mindfulness and nature.
Right. So when we do our life plans, when I did mine, what happens is we come up with a vision that feels really extraordinary. And to me, when I came up with my vision, it never had my job in it. Most people have family in it very strongly. And as I've matured and had kids, it's had it in it, but I didn't have kids until I was in my 50s. So for a long time, it didn't even have family and children in it. The three things that were there were I wanted to live in the weather was my term. I wanted to live in the weather, and that's nature. And the second thing was that I wanted to live a deeply spiritual life. And the third thing was I wanted to create illuminated manuscripts. And that's what I'm doing right now with this mix of photography and poetry. So, but what I learned was that mindfulness looks at individual moments inside of us. It's watching sensations inside of us. Nature is the experience of sensations all around us, aromas, the wind, the movement of the body, all of these things, the temperature, the moisture in the air, all of these things. Chris, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Whether you're following sensations in nature out there or you're following them in here, it's exactly the same thing. So living a profound life of mindfulness or a profound spiritual life is also living a life that is environmentally profound.
Sure. And you talk about the sort of map of mindfulness in the Golden Civilization. What is that map of mindfulness, and how does it connect to the civilization we should be looking to build?
Yeah, well, that's a very profound question, and something I'd recommend people look up either online or get the book Golden Civilization, because it's complex, but I will give you a short version of it that I hope will work. When I realized that it's kind of obvious, right? Kids know it. The only moment that's ever really existed is the present moment. When I really woke up to that fact, I realized that all our maps of time and space are have this oval in them of, and the future is out in one direction and the past is in the other direction. And you've got spatial stuff going on there. And I thought, where's the present moment?
Yeah.
If the present moment is where we feel freedom, where we feel spacious, huge, rich in our lives, where is that? And it doesn't exist. It's ephemeral in these maps of time and space. So I thought, I'm going to make a map where the present moment is the center of everything and is the most important element of the whole map. And that's what I did with the map of mindfulness. And I made it like an hourglass. And civilization is the oval at the top of the hourglass. Mindfulness and of the present moment
is where you are. Yeah.
It's the point. It's the point right in the middle of that hourglass. And then down below is what develops. And this is what I think is most interesting for your kindness project, is that the more that you practice mindfulness, the more you're letting go of all of your self preoccupations. You're letting go of all of your stories of yourself. So you're cultivating selflessness. And what that means is that you're actually cultivating kindness.
It's removal of ego, isn't it?
It's total removal of ego.
You said something really interesting where in your life plan, the job doesn't define you. And I think in Western society, we're often linked to that status and role, aren't we? When in reality, it means nothing, does it? It doesn't mean we're better people. It just means we do a certain job.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of keen to sort of want to know what you want to do from like the age of 13, 14, because you've got to pick your choices and of your subjects, and then as you go on, that subject to influence what subjects you can do from there, and then the subjects you take from there influences what kind of job you can get. So by the age of 13, 14, 15, you've already got to have your mind made up.
It's
really
interesting.
Right. That's right.
We're having because Charlotte's got exams coming up, and there's a pressure that comes with that. And we had a conversation the other day where I said to Charlotte, your exams, the success, I want you to work hard and I want you to do as well as you can, but the success of those exams don't define you as a human being. And even if you do well and you try hard, right? If you fail, you get back up and try again, completely relaxed, but don't put, and to Charlotte, bless her, it feels like there's a lot on her shoulders at the minute. And I wanted to try and take that off just by saying, look, that the defining factors on you as a human aren't based on your exam results or the job you do. They're based on values and attributes and things like that. Yeah, and it's the challenge we've got is, I think, in a conventional traditional education system, we don't teach those values enough, do we?
No, we don't, and we teach primarily thinking and analytic skills as opposed to experiential skills, wisdom, and emotional maturity, authenticity. We do not teach authenticity at university, and you can get it by reading and intellectually. All of them have elements of it floating in. But
I mean, I think part of the challenge is education designed to teach people for the industrial age, and we don't live in the industrial age anymore. I don't think education's adapted as quickly as it probably needs to, but we are. Hopefully, we'll get there. So, one of the other things you talk about in the Golden Civilization, George, is habits, and the need to change our habits. What habits do you think we need to abandon, and what do we need to adopt?
I love the question, Chris. And as I mentioned earlier, I think about, I kind of organize in my mind right now, partly because I'm writing this book about it, that we are meant to live in 3 domains of freedom. We're meant to live in freedom, and as human beings, and there are different ways of thinking of that. I mean, you go to a culture that's very poor, and then think about earning more money and bringing more money into their culture and having more material freedom. And that's very relevant. That's very important as a stage of freedom in civilization. I think of it in 3 different ways. I think that the subtitle of my book, the title of my book is The 3 Domains of Freedom. The subtitles say it all. So the first domain is each moment is yours. And the second domain is your life is yours. And the third domain is civilization is yours. And so the question is, how do we rob ourselves of each of those experiences? So if we're not living each moment as it is ours, that's the domain really of mindfulness. The more that we practice mindfulness, the more we're coming back to individual moments and learning that, hey, we can actually experience more of them and let go of the stuff that blocks us. So that's letting go of the habits that take us away from being right here, right now, is one habit. The second habit that I would say is in regard to life planning. And there, it's like what you're talking to Charlotte about what's most meaningful, about what's most important. And I'd say even more important, Charlotte, for you to get life plan, to look at the 3 questions that I've thrown out there in various books and things, or go to a life planner and just define what's that vision. Regardless of how you thought you were going to go, what would be incredible life?
What would be the best life for you?
What would be the best life? And then you let go of the habits that are standing in the way of that life. So that's the second domain of freedom. And the third domain of freedom is civilization. And here we all feel blocked. We all feel like we're second-class citizens compared to the politicians or the oligarchs or the autocrats. And we need to get over that. The truth is that we've claimed democracy democracy. You guys in the UK have done more than any other culture in the world for that. And in my opinion, in the history of humanity, and America's tried to pick up the slack and be a leader in it as well. But we need to stand up and say, no, this world is our world. And we're gonna speak out. We may just be a tiny voice, but the more of us speaking out, the more power we have, as we see in the Ukraine, and as we are inspired by them to say, our vision of democracy and a democratic freedom, of a healthy planet, of a great civilization, is one that we want to call out to and make happen.
Yeah,
So
love that.
And
Love
let go of the habits that stand in the way of that.
Love that. Right. So help me. I've got a bit of a paradox going on in my mind there, Jules.
Sure.
So we're both planners, right? We look at
yeah.
future focus, right? So we are future focused. But you've talked a lot about living in the present. How do you get the balance right? I don't think I am particularly successful at this, to be frank. How do you get the balance right between having that future focus for our own lives and the lives of our clients, but also making sure we live for today?
Yeah, I think that that mindfulness is profoundly important for all of us to take up a practice that is 20 minutes a day and is coming back to the present moment again and again and again in a very narrow field, usually at the nostrils or at the belly. Just really narrow it down so that then you're seeing all the thoughts that get in the way and you can do something about it. So this question of balance is profoundly important. It's not that our world of planning is unimportant, irrelevant. It's profoundly important to our life plans. You and I have a vision. Charlotte has a vision of what our lives are meant to be. That vision is looking into the future. It's drawing on the past, and we're moving toward it. And if our vision is compelling and we're passionate about it, it makes our life so much more meaningful.
We'll take action towards it, won't we? Yeah.
We take action towards it. But if we don't have this balance of living in the present moment, we get a little out of whack and we don't see things clearly and we don't see other people clearly. And we're
not, I suppose the idea of life is having an enjoyable one every day, isn't it?
That's it. Every day.
If you're too busy rushing towards this future life that you think is going to be enjoyable, you're not taking enough time to enjoy it today.
And mindfulness develops kindness because it develops selflessness. So it brings more kindness into the fold. So the virtues in the map of mindfulness, virtues begin to permeate civilization the more that we do that kind of work.
So before we finish, George, and I know because I've read 2 or 3 of your books, but share with Charlotte for me, please, if you don't mind, because I think she'll find it really useful. Those 3 questions that you talk about when you help people life plan. Just share those with Charlotte for me.
Great. So Charlotte, you always answer them in order. The first one's just imagine you have all the money you could possibly want for the rest of your life, okay? All the money you need for the rest of your life. Maybe you're not as rich as J.K. Rowling or the Queen of England, but you've got all that you need, all right? So if you had that much resources, what would you do with your life? How would you lead your life? So that's question number 1. Okay, so
you know what I love? Just that, I don't know. That's deep. Just that flow of frustration was amazing. Good.
You win the lottery. You got it. You can do what you want. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is more serious, but play with that. Have fun with that. Imagine all the places you'd travel and who you would be and what you'd study and where you'd go. And would you do work? What kind of work would you do? What would you really enjoy? So that's number 1. Number 2 is this is much more serious, and this is life and death. You go to the doctor, and the doctor says to you, "I'm so sorry. You have a rare ailment, and you'll feel perfectly healthy for the rest of your life, but your life is going to be a short one. You only have 5 to 10 years left to live." So what would you do if you knew that you had this limited time frame, 5 to 10 years? Then what would you pour your life into? What would you do? What would be most important? And I'd spend 5 or 10 minutes on each of these questions and I'd write them down. And the third question is the most important of all, and it's the most serious one. So if you thought that last one was serious, this one starts the same way.
I was expecting the blows to get bigger, like the first one you went, and by the end you're like,
yeah. So the third one
First
is
one's hard. It gave me too many options.
yeah, exactly.
Too much choice.
the third one. You go to the doctor, and this time the doctor says, "I've totally blown it." She'd been doing some tests and said, "I blew it. You've had a rare ailment, and it's come to term, and you have 24 hours left to live." The question is not what would you do with your time. The question is thinking about all those things that you'd anticipated doing. All those things you'd anticipated accomplishing, who it was that you'd anticipated becoming. And writing down then, what did you miss? Who did you not get to be? What did you not get to do? And write that down. And that's the most important question of all. And our life plans are hugely around that particular question. They incorporate some of the other things, but they're hugely around that question.
And this is part of the reason we do the Kindness Project, George, because as you said, a lot of this is about legacy, isn't it? What do you want to leave behind in the world? And certainly we're sort of doing our little bit of doing it, and you've done amazing work as well. So thank you so much. I've learned a lot today. Loved it. Oh no, Charlotte's got a question.
You missed the last question.
No, you're going to do that.
Oh,
you're going to do the last question. I'll let Charlotte. Should we do some actually with John? Should we have a bit of fun? Should we do some questions of the podcast?
Yes, certainly.
So actually, we've got a couple of. So what we normally do on the Kindness Project, George, is to finish off an interview with our audience, and just as a bit of fun, we normally ask a random question every week. So we've got some amazing questions we'd like to ask. Bit off topic, bit random, but we'll give it a go.
Here we go.
So Charlotte's going to ask the first one.
So,
What is your favourite joke?
What is my favorite joke?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I just shared one the other day. You might not get it because it's language. It's maybe not my favorite one, but it's one that I just recently shared. And you know how in mathematics we learn that two negatives
make a positive.
Yeah. So there was this professor in New York City of mathematics, and he was asked by one of his graduate students, yeah, I understand that two negatives make a positive. Is it ever the case that two positives make a negative? And the professor went, yeah.
Very good. Very.
I do like good language.
Oh, Charlotte really appreciate that one. That's an interesting one. If they made a TV show of your life, George, what would they call it?
Oh my golly. I don't know that about a TV show, but I hope that my legacy is that people think that I've encouraged them to be more of who they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Charlotte wants to do one.
Yes, I would like to.
Are you picking one?
Yeah.
What's your favourite pizza topping?
What's my favorite what?
Pizza topping.
Oh, pepperoni. I'm a meat lover.
Pepperoni.
Yeah.
So do you have any inanimate objects in your house that you have named?
Oh God!
Is that even on there?
So
Have you asked that? That's an amazing question.
So wonderful! What a wonderful question. My kids would probably come up with something that I've named. I used to call our refrigerator a video cassette recorder.
Right.
Which my 4, 5, and 6-year-old daughters thought was hilarious.
Brilliant.
I've been trying to push for us to call the car 4 because it's an electric car.
So we've just converted to an electric car living in London. That makes sense, and because of some of the sort of environmental stuff. Charlotte's desperate to name the car, but
I want either Thor or Thunderbird.
Sounds good. Anyway, on that note, where can people find out more about your work, George, and your books and the work you do?
So there's two websites, and one of them would be the kinderinstitute.com, which is all about the financial work that I've done. And the other one would be just simply georgekinder.com. And one of the cool things there, if they go on that right now, is you can get a free subscription in your email of my newest book, which is these beautiful photographs and poems of every week. But you'll also get so you have to sign up for it, but it's free. But you'll get a description of all the books, all the different things I've done, photography,
Amazing.
Whatever. Yeah,
Amazing.
georgekinder.com and kinderinstitute.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We've loved having you as a guest, and hopefully you've enjoyed it too.
Wonderful. I want to hear about those 3 questions. What you come up with, Charlotte? Go for
Russ? Russ, good? Yeah?
Yeah, we're ready to go, mate.
Oh, okay, good. Right, let's just get Kevin's questions up. That's great. Kevin, you ready to go?
Yep, whenever you are.
Okay. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on the Kindness Project. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. It's Friday. I've just got back from the gym, so I'm feeling energized, so I'm really good.
So talk to me about the gym then. So is it early mornings are your habit? You like to get it done and get out of the way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but I do expeditions. My hobby is to do expeditions, and to do those, I've got to keep my fitness level up.
100%.
And I'm no spring chicken anymore, so I need to do it pretty much every day. So I typically do 5 or 6 days a week, about 90 minutes, and I mix it up between gym work, cycling, rowing, and dragging tires around the local woods.
You know what I like? I mean, I do I'm similar to you. I'd probably do about 5 days a week. My favourite session during the week is a Saturday, because then I get to go outside and I do like a sort of an outdoor boot camp. Flipping tires is great fun, right?
Yeah.
No, it's good stuff. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a civil engineer by training.
Yeah.
Grew up in the northwest of England and in North Wales. Studied civil and structural engineering at university. Always wanted to be a civil engineer, became a civil engineer, then decided I wanted to do something different. Studied for an MBA, did an MBA, studied accountancy. So as I say, I can read a blueprint and I can read a balance sheet. And then I worked at a large chemical business for 4 years as plant accountant. And then I joined Porsche. Porsche were looking for somebody who could be the interface between the commercial team and the engineering team. And I took that role. And over the next 5 years, I worked my way up through the company until I found myself in a position where the company was in deep and desperate trouble.
Right.
And much to my surprise, they appointed me managing director. And I was 32 years old. I was as green as grass. And my job was to fix the business, which we did. We built a fantastic team spirit. We had a great team, but they needed leading. And so we changed the mindset and pulled together a fantastic culture. And within 4 years, we took the business from number 32, which it was in the marketplace, out of 32 brands. We were the bottom of the market, to number 1.
How's that measured? How do they? Because I suppose there's sort of motor brands out there that are higher end, sell less units but niche. How do they measure the brand element?
Well, we did it on customer satisfaction. So there's a national customer satisfaction survey, and I was never going to sell more cars than Ford.
Yeah.
But to me, the key ingredient to success was when the customers say you're the best in the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what we were trying to get to, and that's where we got the business.
Amazing. Do you think that sort of having a grip of the numbers and having a grip of the sort of engineering element of building the product was quite a unique combination? One of the reasons that you managed to do the job well.
Well, it seems to be. I've never considered it that way. I mean, I studied engineering because I was interested, and I studied accountancy because I did want that skill. I knew I wanted to run businesses.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, it's been fortunate for me that I can look at a business from both aspects, from the operational aspect and from the financial aspect. And so for the last, I left Porsche, I ran BMW for 5 years where we had huge success. But again, doing the same things, you know, engaging the team, building a culture of determination and passion. And then I walked away.
Yeah.
And I walked away at the age of 40 to build my own technology business, which went on to be very successful. And I've been building tech businesses ever since. So I've had 20 years now of building technology businesses. I think I'm on number 15 now.
Okay.
And I just have a lot of fun doing it and working with people who share the passion, and we go out and create something so extraordinary. Because, you know, talk about the numbers, I don't believe that the way to build anything successfully, take business, is to say, right, we've got to hit this number.
No.
It's not about that. It's about saying, we want to build something that's extraordinary. And we as a team want to build something that we can look back on and say, hey, look what we did, and be proud of it. And so my leadership approach is about engaging the team and inspiring the team to build something that is extraordinary.
I suppose that's the secret sauce, isn't it? You know, you can have the best qualifications, engineering, and a really good grip and understand the numbers, but if you don't inspire the people, and I know we're going to be speaking about this quite a lot today, if you don't inspire people to come with you on that journey, it's going to be a lot more difficult, right?
Well, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, I always differentiate between the word motivation and the word inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, motivation is short term. I can motivate you tomorrow. I'll give you a pay rise, and that'll last for 3 months, and then, you know, the kind of excitement of that goes away. But if I can inspire you to come into the business every day and give your best and have fun doing it and contribute to building something that's extraordinary, that's self-fulfilling, and it goes on, and that's my approach to leadership.
And it links to those intrinsic motivations, doesn't it? Not the extrinsic motivations of just a bit more cash. It's like, what do we want to achieve with our lives that is inspirational? You know, that's the interesting thing. And talk to me about the book. So really exciting time for you at the minute, because the book is coming out next week. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the book is called Catching Giants, and that's how I believe we approached the Atlantic rowing race, which we finished just over 2 years ago now. It's a race from Spain to Antigua in an open rowing boat. We were novice rowers. We'd never rowed in our lives until 2 years before we did the race. And we took the view that we wanted to go and do something extraordinary. And I mentioned a minute ago that my hobby is expeditions. You know, I climb mountains, I walk to crazy places, but I'd never rowed an ocean. I'd never rowed. And we decided that as 5 novice rowers in an open rowing boat, we were going to break the world record for the fastest crossing of the Atlantic, which is a completely outrageous and arrogant thing to say. But, you know, why not, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we took the lessons that we'd learned from business about planning, about inspiration, about the culture, about organization, about process, and we applied it to our preparation for the race. And then we went out and we set rowing from Spain, and we thought we were in pretty good shape until the first night, when we got absolutely hammered in a storm. We've got 3-4 meter waves coming over the top of the boat. This is an open rowing boat with half a meter freeboard above the water. We're down at water level.
Yeah. You're feeling every wave, right?
Oh, you're feeling every wave. I mean, the boat is all over the place. Yeah. And at one point, we had a massive wave hit us and snap 2 of the oars. So we're completely out of control now. And the book is the adventure story of how do you row across an Atlantic? How do you actually do that? What's it like to be on that little boat facing the ocean? And then the other side of the page is, and what are the lessons for business from that?
Yeah.
So, you know, what do you take out of that situation? 35 days, 19 hours and 50 minutes later, we pulled into Antigua as new world record holders, which was quite
Right.
extraordinary.
What I'm interested in is how that all started. So, is it just 5 people you knew having a chat in a pub? Yeah, how does that all start in terms of the idea, all the way through to just getting in the boat day one?
Well, it started because it originally started because a very good friend of mine, a guy called Peter Van Ketz, had rowed across the Atlantic twice.
Right.
And he and I were speaking at the same conference, and he said to me, "Kev, you should do it. You'd love it. You love adventures. You'd love rowing the ocean." I said, "Peter, you're nuts. I don't know anything about rowing. I don't know anything about navigation on an ocean." I said, "I'd just end up dead." He said, No. He said, "I'm sure you could do it." I said, "No, you're nuts, and I'm not doing it." So I went away, and this thing kind of filtered into my brain, and it goes round and round and round.
It's one of those ideas that percolates, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it percolates.
Yeah.
And you do a little bit of research, and you start looking. You think, interesting. And then I was speaking at a conference, and I was speaking at a conference in Monaco to 300 marine industry employees.
Right.
And at the end, there was a question. Excuse me, Kev, what's your next adventure? Because I use pictures from my adventures to make business points.
Yeah.
I talk about trust. We talk about kindness. We talk about treating people properly. And so I use examples from the expeditions to say, here was the situation, here's how we dealt with it. Let's translate that into business. And so I'd shown some photographs of the expeditions, and one guy said to me, "What's your next expedition?" And I said, "What do I say? Because I haven't got one planned." And then I thought, well, I've just been speaking to Peter. I said, "Well, actually, I've been kicking around the idea of rowing across the Atlantic. Anybody want to come with me?" And you get 300 people laugh, and then it goes away. And I thought, well, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
But this guy didn't give up. So afterwards, he came and found me when we're all standing around having a chat. And he said, "Were you serious?" And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about rowing, don't know anything about navigation on an ocean, don't know anything about sea survival, but other than that, I'm good to go." And he said, well, I'll come with you. And I've got 2 mates who'll do it as well. And it's a 4-man boat.
Yeah.
So it kind of went from there, and then it spun up, and then I told my son, and I've done all the other adventures with my son. And I told him, and he said, "Well, that's me in as well. So that's 5 of us.
Right.
So we're 5 men. And there's a 5-man world record. We're going to beat it." And I said to them, guys, you're all in your 20s. I'm in my 60s.
Yeah.
If you want to break the world record, then row across with me now. Let me show you how to run an expedition and train you in organization and all of that side of it.
And then do it again with somebody who's 20.
Exactly. You do it again with another young guy, and you break the world record. And they said, no, we're going to do it with you. And that's what we did.
Amazing. I love that. Talk to me about that experience of just, building those adventures with your son, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I've been climbing mountains. I grew up, as I said, in the Northwest, and we would go each weekend to Snowdonia and we'd go climbing. And so I've grown up climbing mountains and then doing other stuff. And my son has watched me do this. And then as he grew up, he said, "Can I come with you?"
Can I come? Yeah.
So the first expedition with him was when he was 12. And we went trekking around the Brecon Beacons. I just took him somewhere where he could get a flavour. Took him around the Brecon Beacons, up and down some big hills. His rucksack was bigger than he was. I've got this wonderful photograph, literally his big pack on his back. And he loved it. And then when he was about 15, I walked to the North Pole. And he was too young. I mean, it would have been too tough.
Yeah.
And then once you walk to the North Pole, well, you want to walk to the South Pole. So when he was about 17, I gently suggested over dinner one day to my family, I'd like to walk to the South Pole. My wife's kind of used to it. She's known me a long time. And Matt perked up and he said, "Well, you're not going without me this time."
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So we went, so we walked to the South Pole together, which was a pretty tough assignment. I mean, it's a very challenging place to get to. People don't appreciate that the South Pole is at 10,000 feet altitude, and it's at equivalent of 14,000 feet because the Earth's atmosphere is thinner down there and blah, blah, blah. But it was, our average day was minus 45 centigrade. So it's a very challenging environment.
How long did the expedition take?
We were on the ice for about 6 weeks.
Right.
So, and he plugged away, and honestly, after the third day, I thought he wasn't going to make it. But then I realized he wasn't eating properly.
Yeah. Is there a point where you get acclimatized?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is. Yeah. There's a point where you stop noticing the cold.
Yeah.
And you're still going to be very cautious, because when you stop noticing it, that's when you can get frost nip, and particularly any exposed areas. Your face. I have 2 scars on my face from a bit of frost nip. So you do have to be wary at all times, but you do stop noticing the extreme cold. I mean, when you get off the airplane on Antarctica, it is like somebody hitting you in the face with a baseball bat. I mean, it is that cold.
Yeah.
But you do acclimatize, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've gone on since then. So we've gone and climbed some of the world's biggest mountains together, and we went back to the North Pole so he could do both poles.
So was the conversation when you decided to go on your own expedition the same? Was it, you're not leaving without me, Dad?
No, it was quite the opposite, actually.
Oh, was it? Right, interesting.
Yeah, because I said to him, "Hey, I'd like to row the Atlantic. Do you want to come?" And he said, "No." I said, "Why?" He said, "We'll die." He said, "It'll be pain, and more pain, and then we'll die." I said, "Well, try and be a bit more positive than that." And he said, "No." He said, "We don't know anything about it. It's too dangerous. I'm not coming." So
I'm assuming the guys that the guys who were in the boat had some sort of knowledge of the environment they're going in, or navigation, or was it 5 complete amateurs?
Well, none of them had ever rowed.
Right.
But they were dinghy sailors, and a couple of them worked on super yachts as crew members. So they had some understanding of the sea.
Yeah.
So when I said to Matt, "Okay, well, that's a shame because I've got a crew," he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've got a crew." "Oh," he said, "You're serious?" I said, "Yeah, I'm absolutely." He said, "Oh, I'm in then."
Yeah.
I'm in then. So that was it. So he was in.
So if it was just you, Kev, he wouldn't have done it. But
well, I said to him that I enjoyed it so much, I'm going to do it again. And he said, "Well, you're mad." I said, "Well, I'll do it on my own." He said, "No, you'll die." I said, "Well, what if I did the Pacific? Would you come with me?" He said, "Yeah, I'll come with you on that." So we're going to do the Pacific in 2024. But the story of the book is, what do you learn? How do you go out and race against Atlantic oarsmen who, some of them have been Olympians? I mean, we're racing people who are serious oarsmen.
And I suppose one of the things that came across in terms of when I've been reading some elements on the book, so I haven't read the book, but I've been doing some research for this interview, was that there was so many lessons that you learned through the process of going on the expedition. Do you want to share a couple of those? What were the ones that stand out the most? Now, I know that in the blurb it says there's 80, so we don't need to go through all 80, but there's probably a couple that you want to share.
Well, I think the biggest one is the recognition that preparation is everything.
Yeah. And
it's the same in business. You've got to do your thinking before you lurch into some business situation you're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
The most critical one, I believe, is about the culture. And the words we used on the boat were "be kind."
Yeah.
And I know this is a kindness podcast, but it was "be kind," because we're all going to have a very bad day.
Yeah.
Now, to give you an idea, we're rowing 24/7, and there's no support vessel. People keep saying to me, "Would you get off at night into a..." No, we're just in a rowing.
Yeah.
That's it. There is nothing but us. There is no rescue. There is nothing. So we're all going to have a bad day. When you're rowing, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, all day, 7 days a week, and we rowed for 19 days without taking a break. We gave ourselves a 30-minute break to celebrate New Year.
Right, and that was it.
That was it.
It was work all the way through. Then,
work all the way through.
Yeah.
But that's why the culture is so important, because when you're lacking in sleep, as we were, you get 2 hours off. You've got to eat, wash, do the jobs on the boat, use the toilet, all of that stuff, and then you get to sleep. So you might get an hour's sleep, and then you're back on rowing for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
and you start to get a bit batty. You start hallucinating. About day 12, 13, 14, you are seeing things that are not there. I at one point I knew exactly where we were because I could see Tesco. I was absolutely convinced of this particular shadow out on the ocean was Tesco.
Was it Tesco?
Yeah, completely bonkers.
Yeah.
But the culture that we created meant that we supported each other through.
And that's what I'm interested in. So that element of culture, that element of be kind,
yeah,
has that manifested in the boat when you're out and you've had that sort of hour's sleep? How does that culture manifest itself? Is it just making sure that you're considerate of each other and the fact that we're all going through a tough time, so let's help each other through it?
Yes, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Somebody might be having a really tough shift and finding it hard work to row for that particular 2 hours. You don't moan at them. What you do is say, okay,
support,
ease off a little. I'll carry it for the next hour. You ease off. And we were 5 guys who were all determined to give absolutely 110%. But there comes a time when some people say, you know what, I'm just struggling a bit right now. Okay, then we'll carry it. You just you give yourself a breather for a moment. We'll carry it.
Is that a culture you applied to business as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The thing about leadership is it's about inclusivity. Yeah. It's not about exclusivity. It's about inclusivity. And the role of being a leader, to my mind, is about creating a culture where people feel part of it.
Yeah.
Where people feel that they are engaged, they're involved, and that's what leads to the inspiration.
Yeah.
And so my approach to leadership is about being very inclusive. It is about talking to everybody. It is not about exclusivity. In some of the businesses I've run, one of the first things I've done is the old-fashioned close down the executive dining room.
Yeah,
At
BMW, it creates a barrier, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. At BMW, I turn the executive dining room into a library and a relaxation area for the whole team.
Amazing.
So people could come in there, read books, read journals, have a chat, take a break.
I suppose the interesting thing with that is, do you think business culture in particular, has changed? Because I'd argue it's changed for the better over the last sort of 3 decades. Do you reckon we've moved from a situation where it was a less kind environment, a bit of a dog-eat-dog environment, potentially in the 70s and the 80s, and we've sort of evolved to a situation where we realise that only works for a certain amount of people? What do you think?
Yeah, I do think it has evolved because thankfully more leaders have learned that the way to engage their teams and build a great business is about catching people in, not catching people out. If somebody does something that's helpful and positive, then catch them in, make a fuss, engage with them and thank them. When it goes wrong, because things go wrong every day in business,
100%.
Don't make an example of it. That's when you have the quiet conversation. That's when you want to speak about what have we learned from that. And again, this comes back to the boat. When it went wrong, okay, guys, what did we learn from that? What can we do differently next time?
Sorry, go on.
And I was just going to say, we got caught in this storm, which absolutely hammered us and broke 2 of our oars.
Yeah.
We in the morning, through the night, it was about survival. I mean, this was a very, very dangerous situation. And so in the morning, we had a quick team chat because we couldn't row. We were still facing a howling gale. So we deploy what's called a para anchor. We basically throw a parachute in the water to keep us stable. And then we had a team chat. Right, what have we learned from that? And it's not about blame or about, well, you know what, if you'd done that differently, it's not about that. It's what do we learn as a team?
Yeah. And how do we move forward?
Exactly. I apply that in business. And by doing that, I find that people feel they want to contribute. You can't tell somebody to be inspired. You have to invite them.
What role do you think authenticity plays in terms of that? And what I'm talking about is the fact that business leaders often assume that they can't show their own faults or weakness when they're having that conversation. Do you think that's important for leaders to show they're actually human every now and again?
I think it's absolutely critical.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely fundamental. And you know, I always say, look, just because it says CEO or these days chairman on my door, it doesn't mean anything. The door's open. Take the title off.
Yeah,
take the title off.
Yeah,
and also for leaders to engage with their team, they need to go and know their team, need to meet their team, need to walk around and just go and meet the people in the business.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we hear all these things about millennium and Generation Z and Generation this, that, and the other. They're all different. I think the world has moved on, and I'm pleased it's moved on. You know, I'm a little bit cynical about, at the moment, this ESG investing. We only invest in companies that meet these ESG criteria.
Yeah.
And I said, that's nonsense. Sorry. ESG should have been there forever. It's not a new thing.
Yeah.
Equality and governance and treating people properly. I've been doing that for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I don't consider it. I think at the minute the press have got hold of it and it's a fad. But forget the fad, guys. Just realize that proper leadership is about making sure that those values and that culture and that approach is in the business.
Yeah,
from day one.
I mean, I agree that there's an element, certainly sort of in the day job, with, you know, there's a lot of noise in our world about, you know, companies that meet these criteria, and I agree with you. A well-run business should meet that criteria as standard without it being needed to be measured. I think the interesting thing, and we'll see this evolve over time, is I do wonder whether it will change cultures. The fact that there is more of a prominence and focus on it being measured. Yeah, I think the jury is still out on that, but it does feel a bit faddy to me as well. So it's certainly an interesting area at the minute. But I think the interesting thing, and the sort of one of the reasons we started this podcast sort of 4.5 years ago was we wanted to highlight the fact that there was sorry, that's the dog. We wanted to highlight that he wants to get involved in the podcast, clearly. We wanted to highlight the fact that most people are doing good stuff in the world, and actually there's plenty of stuff that's positive in the world that that we didn't think was being highlighted enough, and that's part of the reason we wanted to highlight people doing amazing stuff in the world. I know that one of your things is, you know, people most often than not want to do a good job. Tell me a bit about how that manifests itself in leadership.
Yeah, I always say I've never met anybody who comes into work in the morning and wants to do a bad job. Yeah. I just don't believe that's the case. There are people who may be in the wrong role, or they're not inspired by the vision that we have for the business, in which case that's a separate conversation. Are they in the right job? Are they in the right company? And if not, I will help them to move somewhere else where they are inspired.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I believe people want to do a good job, and the challenge is creating the culture to give them that opportunity. So one of the approaches that I take to business, and that's in the other book, that's in the Inspired Leadership book, is using really quite informal processes, but making it visible so that people can contribute, making the plan for the business visible. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. And these are the priorities. Now, how can you help us with your specific knowledge to get to that point? Because, I mean, I ran a boat company a couple of years ago, and it was a big turnaround operation. I don't know anything about running boats. I know a bit about rowing boats now, but we were building £5 million motor yachts. I don't know anything about motor yachts. But what I do know about is building a team to re-energize the business. And that's what we did. And that was a business that had been making losses for 10 years, and we got it back in profit in 14 months with the same people. It was the same people. It didn't change anybody.
Gotcha.
What we did was re-inspire the team. What we did was allow them to make their contribution.
And part of that was about inspiring them to say, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to achieve. What can you know, because they had the technical skills and knowledge, right? You know, they've got the knowledge to do their stuff. Yeah.
So what I do is build the processes, which is a grand way of saying what we do is discuss it with them, and write the plan
Yeah.
of where we're going to go, and invite them to help us to get there.
Yeah.
And then people want to be part of it. People want to be part of it.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love that. Absolutely love that. 2 seconds. I'm going to be back in 2 seconds. I'm just going to let the dog out. Just bear with me. Bex, come on. Come on. Thanks, Kev. Russ is clearly going to edit that bit out.
You hope.
Yeah, he might not, to be honest. He might not. Yeah, and that brings me on to the point, really. Like you, this is your second book, right?
Yep.
Tell me about inspired leadership, and what do you think it takes to be an inspired leader?
So my first book, which is called Inspired Leadership, is basically 25 years of experience of running businesses in 250 pages. That's how I summarize it, because I get a lot of people approach me. I've probably got 3 this week of people with challenges in their business saying, I hear you're the business fixer. Can you fix this for me?
Right.
And you can't, it's not a magic wand thing. You know, I would say it takes me 100 days to stop the business failing. It takes me 1,000 days to build it back to something that is world class.
Yeah.
So I can't just do it on an email. So what I thought I would do is write a book that I could give to people, say, you want to know how to do it? Go away and read that. Read that. And that book shows you, with examples of the businesses that I've turned around, or the businesses I've grown, or examples of when it's gone right and examples when it's gone wrong. It's all in there, of how to take a business and take it to an extraordinary level, because we've done that again. And you know, I started off, I just told you, 32, I didn't know what I was doing. Well, I know what I'm doing now. I have an approach now.
Yeah.
And I replicate that approach in different businesses. It's not so formulaic that people go, oh, right, okay, so he's going to do this. It's not that. It is sensitive to the environment,
Sure.
but it follows a pattern.
Yeah.
And
it's a system that is flexible enough to evolve, but
exactly.
Also, yeah. And it's an interesting one. I think that element of, I'm assuming from what you're saying, that starts with the culture of the business, right? It doesn't start with the numbers. It doesn't start with anything else. It's like, what is this business run like? Is that the starting point?
The starting point is, what do we want this business to look like when it's
the plan, the strategy.
We literally sit down amongst ourselves and say, what does success look like? Let's talk about it. And what will the customer see? And what will the staff see? And what will our suppliers see? What will people see when we are successful? And we start there, and then we work back to where we are.
And it's interesting because like that measurement of success might differ depending on the business, mightn't it? So
absolutely.
You at Pulse might say, right, okay, we want to be the best, the best in terms of customer service. We want to be the best brand. Our clients think we're amazing, and currently they don't. And this is where we need to get to. Yeah.
And we actually used, when we had our first board meeting, when I was in charge, we used that survey, which was, we were number 32 out of 32. We couldn't go any lower.
Yeah.
And it's pretty shocking for a brand like Porsche to realize we were at the bottom of the pile. Yeah. And we said, well, we want to be number one. And people said to me, you're nuts. Number one, you're number 32. And I said, yeah, well, if I don't say number one, what do you want me to say? Number 10?
Yeah.
Number 5?
Yeah. But then does that inspire enough? Would 12 inspire people at all? It's like, well, nobody wants to be 12.
So we said we want to be number one in terms of customer satisfaction. Then we set the whole business out to achieve that. And that's what we did. It took us 4 years, took us 1,000 days to get to number one. But we were number one, and then we were number one again the following year. And that's when I left and went to BMW. But that's what transformed the company. And that's where the people in the team got excited. And I went back a couple of years ago. It's a long time since I was at Porsche. I went back a couple of years ago to do some TV filming there. And many of the same people were in the business, and they were coming out, hey, Kev, how's it going? Do you remember when? And, they all remember the tough times. Not as in, oh, my goodness, oh, it was dreadful. As in, didn't we have fun? Look what we achieved.
Yeah.
And they're so proud of what we achieved together.
I love that.
So that's where it starts, and then within the Inspired Leadership book, it's the tools we use and the processes we use, and I've written it to be friendly. It's not a textbook, and it gives little examples of how we did this, and it's got photographs in of us actually doing some of this stuff, real pictures of the workshops we've had and how we did it.
No, really interesting. Right, now the dog wants to come back in, so I'm literally last time, I promise. Next up. Right, last time. Thanks, Kev. Appreciate that. Right, so this podcast, Kevin, is all about sharing stories about people doing amazing stuff in the world. And clearly the rowing expedition you went on, even though there's a lot more adventures to come, clearly the rowing adventure you went on is amazing. What I'm interested in sharing with our audience is a little bit about kind leadership. So how do we use that value of be kind, be good in our lives and our businesses to be more inspiring leaders?
Yeah, it comes down to personal approach, and I've been brought up. I grew up in a very working class family, and my parents always instilled in me the belief to show respect. Show respect to people. Everybody is somebody's mother or father, son or daughter, sister or brother. Everybody.
Yeah.
So respect people as individuals. And so my approach to leadership, and one that I try to foster in the companies where I work, and I've got some great leaders working with me now who share this philosophy, is
to show. Do you look for that in leaders?
Pardon?
Do you look for that value in leaders? That value and respect.
Yeah, I look for people who are empathetic. I look for people who do share. It's the classic interview, isn't it? I'll meet you at a coffee shop, and then afterwards you say, "What did you get the name of the waitress?" Oh yeah, she's called. She's called Susie. And do you know what she does? This, that, and the other. Great. You've already built a rapport, and it cannot be a false rapport.
Yeah, you know what? I've said this on the podcast before. How people treat people in restaurants and bars is always a fairly good indicator of initially of what they're like. They might be having a bad day or whatever it be, but it's a really interesting sign, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, and in social environments, it's about respecting the people who are providing the service that you're enjoying.
Yeah.
And so kindness to me is about showing that empathy. It is about respecting the individual, because everybody has a job to do in a business. Everybody, and if they don't have a job to do, then why are they there? Why is that job there?
Yeah.
Should we not be engaging that person in something else where they can create more value in terms of their contribution? So it is about showing respect. I mean, examples. To go back to Porsche, which is where it started, I would write a personal Christmas card to everybody in the business. Now that was hundreds of people, but I made sure, and I used to start this in about October, and each one had a personal message in, and I made sure I knew the person. I knew something about them. If I wrote to you, Chris, I hope the podcast's going well. Looking forward to more episodes next year. Merry Christmas. It was a personal message.
It means a lot. Yeah.
And people still today talk about that as wow. And you know what? It wasn't cynical, because I did it because we didn't have enough money. We were struggling. The business was in terrible trouble. So I didn't have enough money to pay people bonuses at Christmas. So what I did was say thank you.
Yeah.
And, so it took me some hours each week to write all these cards, but I meant every one of them.
Yeah, love it.
And so that's what I mean about showing respect to people.
Yeah. And it's, as you say, it's that genuine empathy where people know that you care. And interestingly, I think that genuine empathy is just as important when you've got to make difficult decisions as a business owner, right? So it's one of those things where, I've had to make people redundant and felt terrible about doing that. But it's the right thing to do for the business, and understanding that this is a particularly tough thing for them.
Yeah.
And supporting, guiding them through it, helping them find a new opportunity, and sort of giving them, helping them make sure that the transition for them is as smooth as possible. And I think that empathy really pays off, particularly when you've got to make difficult decisions. What do you think about that?
Right, we just pause there because I've got somebody at the gate. Hello. Could you just pop it on the wall? Is that possible? Thank you very much. Bye.
Kev, you've made me feel better. I'm glad it wasn't only me who had.
There's only me here.
Yeah.
I can't even turn that buzzer off.
All right, yeah. But okay, so talk to me about. Luckily, Russ is a really good editor, Kev, so he'll be able to make this look seamless, right, Russ?
He's off letting the dog out.
Okay, so talk to me about, I think sometimes that empathy is really, really useful when you've, particularly as leaders, you've got to make tough decisions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical because I'm here speaking about being kind to people, but at the end of the day, my responsibility is for the success of the business, and so I did have to make very difficult decisions. And I have made people redundant in a number of the businesses that I've run, but you try to do it in a very honest manner, because it is an incredibly painful thing to do. You're affecting people's lives, and so I've always tried to do it in a way that, exactly as you said, we look after them, we pay them absolutely as much as we can, over and above statutory minimum, to help them to move on, and then give them support and coaching and advice. It is a very tough thing to do, but at the end of the day, my responsibility
is to the business.
Legally is to the shareholders of the business.
Exactly.
I have to make tough calls.
Yeah, and as you say, if you do it with honesty and empathy, I think that's the way to do it. Now, you've talked a little bit about your next adventure in 2024. Is that the next one coming up, or have you got one in 2023?
No, I've got one this year as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so this year we're going to go and canoe the Yukon River through Alaska.
Right.
But that's just, it's not particularly demanding. We're going with the current, so it's 1,000 miles through Alaska.
Amazing.
Camping wherever we stop each night, avoiding the bears, and just enjoying the amazing scenery. So that's planned for this year.
Who's going? Who's on the adventure with you?
Well, I hope I've got some friends going. So I've got friends who've said, "Oh, we'd love to come with you on an adventure, but we're not doing. Oh no, we're not doing. Oh no, we're not doing that. We're not going up that mountain." And
so you try to pick one that's
just
relatively moderate,
just a bit gentler. And so I put it to them, and they said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I said, "Well, bring your kids. They've got teenage sons." I said, "Bring the kids." So
what an adventure! Love it.
Me and my son and a few friends go canoe through Alaska.
Perfect. That sounds really good. That sounds really good. And then the big one, 2024. How long's that going to be?
The big one's 2024, and that's rowing from California to Hawaii. How long? Anywhere up to 60 days at sea. So we'll see.
Yeah, amazing. Love that. Absolutely love that. And where can people find out about you, the work you do, the books, if they want to understand and find out more?
Yeah, so my website is kevingaskell.com. So kevingaskell.com.
Yep.
And the books, you can get to the books through the website, or put my name in Amazon and the books will pop up, or just follow me on Instagram and see what's going on. We put the adventures on Instagram, and that feeds Facebook. And you can keep up with the adventures and what's happening in the businesses and some of the amazing people I'm lucky enough to meet, and it's all there.
Great stuff. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's the end of the show.
It's the end.
It's the end. It's not the end. The end.
You didn't give me any topics for joke of the week.
Well, why don't you do? While Raz and I waffle about something else.
I'm waiting for you to give me topics before I started
we did start that last week, Russ, and that got binned quicker than
Yeah, that got
quicker than
been.
any
That's how to win that.
different.
That lasted
we
as
get
long
that.
as
But you
that
know
lasted
what?
as
Right,
long as
what-
the Weekly Game Show.
Sorry, let's give. I know we need to bring the game show back, don't we? For the last few. You've got new ideas.
No, I haven't.
Get some new ideas then. That's it. And Russ, you just steal
You tell me
Charlotte.
your ideas and I'll steal them.
I think my last one topped the cake nicely on the.
It did. But I mean, because you're so creative, let's go back to you with the ideas. I want a compilation joke because it's a compilation show. I want a joke about collections of stuff. I think is probably where we go with that. Russ, while we're sort of trying to find a joke,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm glad kids still do. I sound really old for saying that. Play out, right? So I mean, not Charlotte at 19
So
playing
you
out.
don't see it as much as you used to, but some kids do.
Well, I mean, I think we're lucky because we live in a sort of cul-de-sac with a bunch of kids. But Sophie loves playing out. She absolutely adores just running, run outs, add, all of that sort of stuff. When's the last time you played, Russ?
I haven't been out for a while. Played out for a while.
Played out for a while. Maybe you knock on your neighbours and say, "Do you want to?"
Oh yeah, and then randomly go collecting people's kids. Why don't I do that?
Do that. I didn't suggest that, did I?
Why don't I get
It's
a
not
yellow
what's your
badge?
neighbour called? What's your neighbour called? Stuart. So knock on the Stuart. Stuart answers the door. Right, we'll practice it while Charlotte's finding the joke. Stuart knocks on the door. So you knock on the door.
Kenny knocked on Stuart's the other day, said to him, we're getting rid of these tray tables. And he said, I'm not interested in the tray tables, but if you're getting rid of your greenhouse, the kids would love it.
Wait, what did you say? Gift him your greenhouse?
Yeah, I said to him he could have
How
it.
many kids have we got?
He's got three. Two sort of toddler age. Oh no, one's 9. The other one's sort of toddler age, and then
Sorry, Russ. I know you haven't got any kids, mate, but when do you think toddler age actually ends?
Sorry, yeah, they're a little older now.
Got kids. 9 to 7.
How old would he have to be for a child that's 87?
101. Well, he could be. Yeah, he could be.
Yeah.
101, 102.
Could be 108, exactly.
Exactly. Right, shall we?
I couldn't find any compilation jokes.
Go on, what have you got?
But I did find collection jokes.
Give me a collection joke then.
A little bit different. Hold on. What kind of training is required to be a trash collector?
Don't know.
None. They just pick it up as they go along.
They just pick it up as they go along, Russ.
That is true.
That is true. On that note, have a lovely day.
That was a load of rubbish as well.
That joke was trash.
It was.
Right, and on that note, have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the Kindness Project for the exciting episode 300. See you then.
Bye.